Chapter 50:18. After waiting for these disciples to stand in different places outside the flying boat, a voice once again sounded from high up in the sky. Everyone, this time there are a total of 50,000 nascent soul and gold core cultivators heading towards the lost land. In order to safely pass through the Wuming mountain range, we will be divided into 5,000 groups of 10. In other words, from 1 to 10 will be a group, and from 11 to 20 will be a group. In each group, 1 and 11 will be the head of the group. The rest of the groups will be so. Everyone, quickly find your own group and find the head of the group to register. Since Xiaohua's number plate was 27833, he was naturally in the 2783rd group. He looked all around, and with some difficulty, he found the disciple of the defeated Immortal Union, who held the 27,831 command plate. It was not that this disciple was hard to find, but because following the voice's command, several thousand cultivators flew up at the same time. The entire scene was quite chaotic, and Xiaohua's line of sight was blocked. Xiaohua found it difficult to find his own group, let alone the other cultivators. Several thousand cultivators were like several thousand blindly flying flies, and only after a long while did they gradually become orderly. Xiaohua had just flown to the front of his own group, when he saw a nascent soul cultivator, holding a command plate flying over at a moderate pace. When that nascent soul cultivator saw Xiaohua, he immediately laughed and said, "Haha, so it's you? If she was here, it would be wonderful." Xiaohua's gaze indifferently swept over, and the corner of his mouth revealed a trace of a sneer. Wasn't this nascent soul cultivator the Jade Fat Ancestor from before? At this moment, the command plate in Jade Fat Ancestor's hand was quite eye-catching. "Your Jade Fat Ancestor?" Behind Xiaohua, a slightly surprised voice sounded. Another nascent soul cultivator slowly flew over, one step slower than Jade Fat Ancestor. "Damn it, Poison Stone Master, why am I in the same group as you?" Jade Fat Ancestor looked at the command plate in this nascent soul cultivator's hand and unconsciously spat, cursing, "I'm really unlucky. I'm the unlucky one." Poison Stone Master cursed, "I'm actually in the same group as you, this thing that's neither male nor female." "Haha, which thing that's neither male nor female? Tell me your name, I like it." Before Poison Stone could finish speaking, another sharp voice rang out. A beautiful female cultivator with long black hair flew over. Her clothes were red and green, making her look particularly gorgeous. Cough cough. When Jade Fat Ancestor saw this person, she immediately coughed twice. She actually had a disgusted look on her face. However, she didn't dare to show her disgust too clearly. Instead, she looked left and right and said in a low voice, "Poison Stone Guru, who was speaking just now?" "Of course it's me." The female cultivator who had just called herself lousy changed her tune and said in a sweet voice, "What? You actually didn't hurry over to greet me when you saw me coming?" Shirqing. Old Ancestor Yuji flew into a rage and shouted, "Which family's great aunt are you? You better explain clearly. Otherwise, even if this daddy doesn't have to go to the Lost Lands, I'll still explain clearly to you." Ioyo. The nascent soul cultivator named Shirqing curled her lips and said, "Your ancestor even watched the moon with me on the mountain peak. If you don't call me lousy great aunt, then what should you call me?" Cough cough. While everyone was talking, a cultivator with a body as tall as an iron tower flew over. He coughed twice and swept his gaze across everyone. He said in a simple voice, "Are you all in the same group as me?" Huang. Huang Chufan? Huang Door God? Not to mention Ancestor Yuji being greatly shocked. Even the last nascent soul cultivator named Shirqing was greatly shocked. In disbelief he cried out, "You? Why did you also come? Since you all are here, why can't this daddy come?" Huang Chufan, who was called Door God, smiled coldly. As he spoke, he flew to the disciple holding the number 27831 and asked, "Am I in the same group as you?" That disciple looked at the number 27,833 in Huang Chufan's hand and said with a smile, "That's right, Senior Huang. You are in the same group as this junior. Junior's name is Shui Chong. Greetings, Senior." Oh. Xiaohua stood to the side and watched. When he heard the nascent soul middle stage cultivator named Shui Chong call Huang Chufan, who was also a nascent soul middle stage cultivator, Senior, he couldn't help but be surprised. In his heart he said, looks like this Huang Door god has some background. Xiao Hua's thoughts were correct. This Huang Chufan naturally had some background. With him standing there, Jade Fat Ancestor, Venomous Master, and Shi Qing didn't dare to say anything. Damn it. Back in the sky, Du Peng saw the chaos and cursed. This Du has been busy dispatching disciples these past few days and forgot about these cultivators. Such a mess. I'm afraid that before they even left the Changchang Plains, they would have been discovered by soul cultivators, right? Brother Du doesn't need to worry, Jin Tu said with a smile. There are only a few cultivators. When your tens of thousands of disciples come, just bring these cultivators away. Du Peng's eyes flashed with coldness. He said coldly, most of these nascent soul cultivators are arrogant and unruly. This Du has a portion of Jindan cultivators among this Du's disciples. I'm afraid they won't be able to suppress them. Then kill the chicken to scare the monkey. Another spirit-severing cultivator suggested without hesitation. While they were speaking, thousands of disciples were already in position. They all stood orderly in the sky, quietly waiting for orders. Listen to my orders. Du Peng's figure flew out from the group of four. He waved his hand and said, disciples, return to your positions. Yes. Not far from the special envoy's flying ship, there was another flying ship of similar size. Following Du Peng's order, there was a chorus of agreement. Groups of nascent soul and Jindan cultivators flew out and supplemented the group of 5,000 that Xiaohua and the others were in. Among them, for cultivators wearing blue robes flew to Xuecheng. The four of them cupped their hands towards Xiaohua and the others. The nascent soul cultivator at the front first said, I am Sek Chi Feng. Greetings, fellow Taoists. The other three were Jindan cultivators. The three of them bowed and said, Juniors Hui Jin Dian Hongji and Su Pei greet seniors. Xuecheng didn't say much. Instead, he looked towards Huang Chufan. Huang Chufan nodded and said, since Huang Chufan was like this, Ancestor Yuji Venomous Stone, and Shi Qing were even more indifferent. They swept their gazes and didn't speak. Xiaohua sighed and waved his hand, saying, rise. His tone wasn't without loneliness, because Xiaohua already saw that these four cultivators, along with Xuecheng who was the first to stand in front, were all cultivators that had been possessed by the devil race. There wasn't a single normal human. It was to the extent that the defeated Immortal Alliance near Xiaohua were also cultivators possessed by the devil race. The entire area near the special envoy's flying ship was really a group of devils dancing in disorder. Different from Xiaohua's loneliness, Bai Fei was somewhat anxious. His situation was similar to Xiaohua's. After finding 2, 3, 7, and 1 nascent soul cultivators, he couldn't help but sweep his gaze around. Even when several groups of nascent soul cultivators came over, he didn't have the mind to say more than a few words. He was far from his previous shrewdness. Master. Xiaoya seemed to have sensed something and hurriedly transmitted her voice. Be careful, these nascent soul cultivators have ill intentions towards you. It seems like one of them is familiar with Ancestor Yuji. Bai Fei composed himself and didn't look at those nascent soul cultivators. He sneered in his heart. These damn things, even if I can't pass through Wuming Mountain Range, I'll take them down with me. I absolutely can't let them reach Dawn Rain Continent. While Bai Fei was speaking, a nascent soul cultivator flew over with 4 gold core cultivators. Bai Fei's eyes lit up. Wasn't the last gold core cultivator he was looking forward to Yi Yin? Bai Fei opened his mouth and was about to call out when Yi Yin hurriedly shook her head slightly, hinting Bai Fei not to recognize her. When Bai Fei saw Yi Yun's expression, his heart was completely at ease. He faintly smiled to show that he understood. Then he leisurely looked around as if he was calculating something. The nascent soul cultivator who brought Yi Yun and the others over wore a purple gold crown and looked very strange. He flew to Bai Fei's side and looked at the group leader. He cupped his hands and said, Senior Marshal Brother Liu, Disciple Hu Yi has come under the special envoy's orders to bring 4 disciples here to await your orders. Disciple Zhangqing Yu Yanli Hizhua, and Yi Yun greets the seniors. The 4 gold core disciples didn't dare to be negligent, and hurriedly bowed to the group of nascent soul cultivators. Haha. Without waiting for Senior Marshal Brother Lu to speak, a nascent soul cultivator at the side licked his lips and laughed softly. I didn't expect to be in the same group as the female cultivators. This old man's luck is really good. Senior Brother Lu frowned. Just as he was about to speak, a commotion broke out not far away. A tall monk with more than 10 skulls around his neck shouted, "What capabilities do you have to be the leader of my group? How can the 10 of us pass through Wuming Mountain Range with you leading us? Hurry up and hand over the token, Senior." A cultivator with a soft but determined voice replied. This junior is under the special envoy's orders to lead the seniors through Wuming Mountain Range. Although this junior's strength is not as strong as yours, this junior has trained with all of you for several years before coming to Changchang Plains. As the group leader, this junior doesn't have any authority. Instead, this junior is responsible for coordinating the actions of the 5,000 groups with all of you. Instead, this junior is under the orders of the special envoy. This junior is far superior to this junior in this aspect. Who said so? The monk shouted. This senior can command 10 people with this token. This senior said so. Du Peng had already looked around and was waiting for someone to come forward to show his authority. He also understood that there would definitely be someone among these cultivators who would come out. As soon as Du Peng saw the monk open his mouth, he immediately flew over and said coldly, "What's wrong? You're not convinced? Vote for it, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and give it a tip." Chapter 50-19. Lord Special Envoy. That disciple didn't expect that his words would really provoke Du Peng. Although he was arrogant and unruly, he wasn't a fool. He hurriedly smiled and said, Junior was just joking with this disciple. How could Du Peng allow him to say more? Wu. He raised his hand, and his palm immediately expanded to several hundred feet in size. Then he grabbed at the monk. The monk panicked and shouted, Senior Du, this is a misunderstanding. At the same time, he moved his body in an attempt to escape. However, seeing that the space around him was sealed and he couldn't teleport, even if he was a nascent soul cultivator, the monk gritted his teeth and shouted, Du Peng, you actually... Unfortunately, before the monk could finish speaking, Du Peng forcefully activated his dermic powers. The giant hand tore through the void and grabbed the monk's body. Humph. Du Peng's voice was like a thunderclap as he said, Since you took the command token of my Defeat Immortal Alliance, then you have to listen to the orders of the disciples of my Defeat Immortal Alliance. If anyone dares to refuse, then they'll suffer the same fate as this kid. Boom. Along with Du Peng's voice, a brilliant light flashed above the hand. With a muffled sound, the monk's body was crushed into a pulp. Chirp chirp. A fat nascent soul was forcibly squeezed out from the gap of the large hand, its face full of panic. Pooh. A green light flashed from Du Peng's nose. Before anyone could see what kind of magic treasure was inside the green light, the nascent soul's head had already been pierced through. The nascent soul's small eyes closed, and it collapsed in Du Peng's hand. Du Pengyu looked around, and his gaze landed on a nascent soul cultivator. He smiled. Is that Patriarch Shurxin? Yes, I am. Shivering with fear, old ancestor Shurxian hurriedly bowed and replied. I heard you have a banner for refining nascent souls? Du Peng asked with a smile. Forefather Shurxian turned pale with fright and hurriedly dropped to his knees. This junior knows his mistake. This junior knows his mistake. Humph, useless thing. Du Peng shook his hand and threw the nascent soul to Patriarch Shurxin. Then he scolded. What are you afraid of? It's a bargain for you. Ah? Patriarch Heart Devouring was stunned. After a while he said ecstatically, Thank you, Senior. Thank you. As he spoke, he quickly opened his mouth and a black flag covered in blood light flew out. The moment the flag opened, countless miserable screams came from within. When the flag opened, the monk's nascent soul was sucked into it. Then Patriarch Shurxian opened his mouth, and the flag flew into his mouth once more. Du Peng threw his nascent soul away and flew into the sky. His eyes were like lightning as he released his pressure. After looking around, he raised his token and said, Although I'm a spirit-severing cultivator, I'll still take token number 1 and go with you to the Wu Meng Mountain Range. Your group leaders are this old man's doppelganger. They can hear this old man's orders, and their actions can also be reported back to this old man through the token. Whoever dares to disobey my orders and try to play tricks in the teleportation tunnel, if they don't want me to reach the Lost Land alive, I'll make sure they die before I do. Yes, we understand. We'll follow Lord Envoy's orders. The group of nascent soul cultivators trembled in fear, while the disciples of Liu Immortal Alliance answered loudly. Xiaohua saw this farce and his face was as calm as water. Similar to Xiaohua, Bai Fei also stayed out of the matter. When he saw Du Peng raise his hand to grab the big monk, everyone looked up at the sky. His figure moved slightly and floated to Yi Yun's side. He raised his hand and handed a storage ring to Yi Yun from his Taoist robe. Yi Yun was shocked. She didn't know why Bai Fei did this, but her expression changed slightly. She didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly took the storage ring. Her trembling and sweaty little hand even touched Bai Fei's finger. Yinner. Bai Fei handed over the storage ring and looked up at the sky with the same expression. Du Peng killed the monk's nascent soul. Bai Fei transmitted his voice. This is the medicinal pill I found for you all these years. I was in a hurry that day and didn't have time to give it to you. Now that we're about to enter the Wuming Mountain range, I'm afraid you'll be in danger in the teleportation tunnel, because your injuries haven't healed yet. So I'm taking the risk to give it to you. Quickly find a time to take it. Yi Yun was a little angry at Bai Fei for taking such a risk, but when she heard that he was asking for medicinal pills for her injuries, and even took the risk to give it to her, she felt sweet in her heart. She smiled sweetly at Bai Fei and nodded slightly, indicating that she understood. Hee. Xiao Yu's voice sounded in Bai Fei's ears again. Master, your bewitchment technique has reached the point of perfection. This medicinal pill contains the Void Cloud pill, right? Bai Fei frowned, showing a displeased expression. Master, don't worry. Xiao Yu seemed to have noticed Bai Fei's displeasure and hurriedly explained. What I mean is that Master hasn't refined the Void Cloud pill to perfection yet. If you give it to this little girl now, I'm afraid she won't be able to force out all of her absolute evil dark Yin. It won't be as effective for Master's cultivation, as expected. You talk too much. Bai Fei scolded in his heart, and didn't say anything else. Bai Fei naturally knew that the Void Cloud pill wasn't refined to perfection, but the Wuming Mountain range was full of dangers. He and Yi Yun could die at any time, so he wanted to seize any opportunity to improve his strength. After Du Peng showed his power, he didn't say anything else. He raised his hand and pointed to the east, where the sky was still gray and gloomy under the bright sun, and said, Everyone make a blood oath. Yes. The disciples of the Defeat You Immortal Alliance who held the number 1 token answered in unison. They opened their mouths and spat out thousands of drops of blood essence. As the disciples cast spells, blood scars like blood shadows appeared in mid-air. Woo-woo. As these blood scars appeared, the heaven and earth vaguely emitted ghostly wails and wolf howls. Wisps of indescribable dark green mixed with black threads rushed out of the void, and shrouded the space of nearly 1,000 miles. For a moment, even the scorching sun in the sky gave birth to a chilling cold. Soul technique? Demon blood shadow? Xiaohua frowned and suddenly understood something. This wasn't out of his expectations. After all, the Defeat You Immortal Alliance was close to the Wuming Mountain range. Moreover, if the Alliance Master of the Defeat You Immortal Alliance coveted the Dawnrain continent and wanted to pass through the Wuming Mountain range, he would definitely cultivate his disciples to cultivate soul techniques. But what Xiaohua didn't expect was that these demons who possessed the bodies of humans could also use soul techniques. Moreover, they mixed their soul techniques with the demon blood shadows. Several thousand blood shadows flew out and rushed into the sky. Du Peng's figure followed and rushed into the sky. He looked at the other 4 doppelganger envoys and said with a smile, Everyone, it's time to ask the Alliance Master's blood talisman. Okay. When the 4 doppelganger envoys heard this, they didn't dare to be negligent. They also flew into the sky and stood in a pentagon with Du Peng. Then, each of them raised their hands and took out a fist-sized blood-colored object from their bosoms. These objects were like amber, and their edges were sparkling and translucent. Inside each of them was a bloody scar the length of a finger. These bloody scars were extremely thick, and there were tens of thousands of fine lines. They looked like a blood-red eye that was looking at the thousands of bloody scars in the sky. Damn it! Xiaohua cursed in a low voice when he saw the power of the blood vessels in the blood-colored object. I'm afraid this Lian Feng isn't an ordinary nascent soul cultivator. He's a soul warrior or even a shaman. Maybe he wasn't kept in the dark. Instead, he colluded with the demon race. The demon race's target is the Dawn Rain continent while his target is the Wuming Mountain range. Xiaohua came to a realization. Together with Du Peng, the other 5 doppelganger envoys urged their blood essence and chanted different incantations from their mouths. As the incantations fell into the blood essence, the 5 blood essences turned into 5 different blood spheres. These blood spheres seemed to be boiling and surging. In the end, they condensed into different shapes. Some were triangular, some were square. Go! Du Peng and the others' complexions seemed to be somewhat pale. In the end, they pointed at the blood sphere and lifted it as if it was heavy. With a shout, the blood sphere fell into the blood talisman. Boom! As soon as the blood talisman came into contact with the blood sphere, it immediately shattered and turned into a baleful aura that soared into the sky. A valiant power of the blood vessels swept away nearly 5,000 bloody streaks in the sky like a big hand. Whoa! Like the sound of green seal scripts, the baleful aura gave birth to all kinds of strange illusions. White bones, blood rivers, the netherworld, flowers, and so on flashed high in the sky like light and shadow. When all these strange phenomena disappeared, a talisman full of blood-colored seal scripts engraved with green seal scripts slowly floated down from the sky. Every time this talisman floated down an inch, a blood-colored mark would rush into the void and disappear. Du Peng then took out a bone case from his bosom. He didn't dare to fly high and only respectfully flew down to the blood talisman. When the blood talisman quietly fell into the bone case, he closed the bone case. His expression relaxed and he put the bone case away into his bosom. He bowed to the other 4 doppelganger envoys and said, "Thank you for your trouble." "We're nothing." Jin Tu and the others faintly smiled. "We don't dare to take credit for working for the Alliance head. On the contrary, Brother Du has to work hard for this trip. Hehe, please help me pass on a message to the Alliance head." Du Peng looked at the Wuming Mountain range in the distance and said word by word, "Succeed or die trying." "Okay." Jin Tu and the others cupped their fists and said, "We'll definitely pass on your message to the Alliance head." "Please." Du Peng's face seemed to be filled with emotion as he raised his hand and said, "Brother Du, please." Jin Tu and the others said with a solemn face, "We'll send Brother Du off." "Okay." Du Peng nodded and took out the number 1 token. He opened his mouth and said, "Everyone." Instantly, the 4,999 tokens produced the same voice at the same time. Yes. At this time, the disciples of the defeated Immortal Alliance didn't speak in unison. Instead, they spoke in the same way as they usually did. These voices also came from the tokens in Du Peng's hand. "Let's go." With Du Peng's order, 10 groups flew out. The other cultivators of the 10 groups didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly followed in an orderly manner. They flew towards the east at a low altitude. Not waiting for these 100 people to fly more than 300 meters away, another 100 people flew out. Xiaohua's group was the 7th group to fly out. Xiaohua, like the other cultivators, placed the command medallion in front of his chest. From the command medallion, he heard the disciple named Xuechong call out in a low voice, "Seniors, we're setting off. Please follow this poor Taoist to fly this way. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a month, vote for a recommendation, collect, reward, and thank you for all forms of support." Chapter 50-20. When Xiaohua heard this, he didn't hesitate in the slightest and flew along with Xuechong towards the northeast for nearly 3 kilometers. Then, he followed the other cultivators and flew towards the east in a formation. When all the nascent soul and golden core cultivators had left, Du Peng took a deep breath and bowed to Jin Tu and the others again. "Farewell. I wish Brother Du success." Jin Tu and the others did not say much and bowed to see him off. When Du Peng turned into a light shadow and flew in front of all the cultivators, Jin Tu and the others looked at each other and shook their heads slightly. They knew that Du Peng's trip boded ill rather than well, and it would be extremely difficult for him to return. Let's go, everyone. Jean Tu looked at the special envoy's flying boat and said, today's matter is over. The next time Alliance Master wants to think about the lost place, I'm afraid it will be 1,000 years later. 1,000 years later. Another Funshan cultivator looked up at the scorching sun and whispered, by then, I'm afraid I'll have turned into a skeleton. As he spoke, he turned to look at Du Peng's back and said, Du Peng's trip this time may seem like a one-way trip, but who knows if it's a blessing in disguise. Sometimes, I have the urge to rush into the Wu Meng mountain range to see what's in the lost place, and whether I can find a way to stop the loss of my lifespan. It's useless to think so much. Jean Tu shook his head. We've just activated our blood essence and sped up the loss of our lifespan. Now let's take the flying boat back. Don't use any spells. Then, everyone said a few more words and landed on a flying boat together. The low-level disciples drove the boat and flew into the distance. Not long after, the world returned to peace. No one knew that 50,000 cultivators were valiantly heading towards the Wu Meng mountain range and pointing their swords at the Dawn Rain continent. 50,000 cultivators seemed to be a lot, but in the Changchang Plains it was nothing. Not to mention, this was a place for soul cultivators. All the mountains, trees, rocks, and rivers were slightly different from other places in the Yilin continent. Just like the 10,000 demons realm and the 1,000 demons sacred realm, everything was much bigger. A group of 50,000 cultivators flying low in the sky was really inconspicuous. Daoist Wu and Huang Tong had already been to the Changchang Plains and did not find any special traces. Therefore, Xiaohua did not pay much attention to it. He followed the other cultivators and flew at a low altitude. He observed the scenery along the way and waited to see what Du Peng and the others were up to. Since Wuming mountain range was one with millions of Meng mountains, this Changli Plain was also the border of soul cultivators. It was similar to the Bai and Stockade where Xiaohua, Li Zongbao, and the others went on a journey. The climate there was extremely hot, and there were many mountain ranges. On top of that, there were many rocks, not to mention green grass. Most of them were scratching the ground. Sticking close to the ground, there were things that looked like thorns. These things had some thorns, but they also had some green leaves. There were even some fruits that were smaller than gravel among the green leaves. Furthermore, there weren't any large trees on the mountain range. Occasionally, there would be some slightly tall trees. They were no taller than 1 foot, but the trunks were extremely thick. There were also many branches on the trunks. However, these branches and tendrils were somewhat dry, and they were faintly dyed with a yellowish color. Seeing so many scenes that were similar to millions of Ming mountains, Xiaohua suddenly realized something. He hurriedly shouted in his heart, "Fellow cultivators, because of the change in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, millions of Ming mountains was barren. How many natives starved to death? How could I forget about this when I arrived at Wuming mountain range today?" Lightning Immortal smiled bitterly. "Fellow cultivator, we were not idle. When we broke into the realm from the 10,000 demon realm, we were already unconscious, and you lost all your magic power. Then, you were schemed against by the devil race and fell directly into the heaven sacrificial abyss. You benefited from the disaster and obtained the Tao seed. Then we began to wake up. After that, we rushed to recover, but we had no time to save the world." Fellow cultivator Lightning is right. Daoist Wu also said, "I didn't have much free time. Although it took me several years to come here from the Tianfeng Forbidden Land, I spent most of these years absorbing the origin of water. Even when I arrived at Wuming mountain range that day, I paid more attention to finding the teleportation tunnel to the Dawn Rain continent." At this point, Daoist Wu stopped and reminded, "Fellow cultivator, there is a swamp in front of us. There are powerful soul beasts in it." As soon as Daoist Wu finished speaking, Shui Chang's voice came from Xiaohua's token. "Seniors, slow down. We are about to turn north in the next 10 miles. Haha." Xiaohua laughed. It seems that the Defeat Yak Immortal Alliance has already figured out the situation around Wuming mountain range. From here to the heaven and earth confinement that you saw earlier, it's about 1,000,000 miles away, right? With the Defeat Yak Immortal Alliance's speed and method, it will take more than a year. Too slow. Lightning Immortal muttered. Fellow cultivator, why don't we snatch that blood talisman and search its soul directly to see what means the defeat Yak Immortal Alliance has? We will go there ourselves. There are not many good people among these cultivators heading to the Dawn Rain continent. Yes, there aren't many good people. Xiaohua nodded and looked around. It's nothing to kill these 50,000 cultivators, but the soul search might not succeed. Why don't we directly find the defeat Yak Immortal Alliance's Alliance Master Lian Feng? At this point, Xiaohua frowned and didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at Ancestor Yuji, who wasn't too far away from him. This reckless thing was actually discussing with Venomous Stone on how to kill him in the teleportation tunnel. Of course, it would be best to kill him in front of Beauty Yu to achieve the effect of killing the chicken to scare the monkey and make Beauty Yu submit. Kill. Xiaohua was instantly filled with killing intent. He wanted to follow Lightning Immortal's idea and kill these several tens of thousands of nascent soul cultivators who were possessed by the devil race. He wanted to search Du Peng's soul directly. But just as this thought appeared, a pure and holy luster suddenly appeared in the distant horizon. This luster streaked across the sky and blocked the path of the several tens of thousands of defeat Yak Immortal Alliance disciples. Zhang Jie. Xiaohua was stunned and inwardly said in surprise, Why did she come here? Could it be that she discovered the abnormality of Du Peng and the others and wants to kill these devils? However, contrary to Xiaohua's expectations, Zhang Jie didn't use any sacred light realm technique to look at the several tens of thousands of humans. Instead, he stood on a distant mountain peak and frowned as he looked at the distant Wuming mountain range. On the other hand, Du Peng, who was flying neither too fast nor too slow, had a tense expression as he hurriedly ordered the 50,000 cultivators to stop. He hurriedly flew in front of Zhang Jie and respectfully saluted. Greetings, senior. Zhang Jie glanced at Du Peng with a face full of disgust and said, No need to call me senior. I can't be considered your senior. Yes. Du Peng didn't dare to offend Zhang Jie and hurriedly said, But Junior really doesn't know what to call me other than this title. Zhang Jie originally wanted him to call him by his real name, but when she thought about how her name came from the mouth of a devil, she impatiently waved her hand and said, Whatever. What took you so long? Senior. Du Peng hurriedly smiled and said, Going to the lost place isn't an easy task. Think about it, even with your strength, you can't find a way to pass through this heaven and earth restriction. How can we, the cultivators of the human world, pass through so easily? If we don't fully prepare, going to the Wuming mountain range is suicide. We've been preparing for almost 600 years. Zhang Jie sneered and said, Could it be that you're plotting something again? Senior, please spare my life. Du Peng wanted to kowtow, but when he thought of the 50,000 cultivators behind him, he suppressed the fear in his heart and hurriedly begged. Junior is just a small fly in front of Senior. I definitely wouldn't dare to have any thoughts. Moreover, Junior knows that it's impossible for Junior to pass through the Wuming mountain range. I still have to rely on Senior's help. Think about it, Junior wouldn't have any plans. However, the way to the lost place is still in the hands of Alliance Master Lian Feng. If he doesn't want to, nobody can do anything to him. Back then, the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Alliance issued an order for Lian Feng to hand over the way to pass through the Wuming mountain range to the Heavenly Alliance, but he refused. In the end, the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Alliance had no choice but to ignore this matter. Therefore, what Junior can do is to make this trip as soon as possible. As for the details, it's still up to Alliance Master Lian Feng. You have so many disciples, how long will it take to get there? Zhang Jie looked around and said, How about I take you with me? Just as he said this, Zhang Jie immediately noticed Xiaohua in the crowd. Although Xiaohua had concealed his cultivation, and even his appearance was different from before, Zhang Jie, an angel of the Holy Light Realm, could still see through him at a glance. Zhang Jie. Xiaohua hurriedly transmitted his voice to him. I'm also going to the lost place. We have the same goal, so don't talk too much. You can actually hear me? Zhang Jie's holy face was filled with surprise, and he asked again, Are you still a cultivator of the mortal realm? That's all for later, I'll talk about it later. Xiaohua was not afraid of Zhang Jie, who was suppressed by the laws of heaven and earth in the Yilin continent, and said softly, "Since you can't find the transmission channel to the lost place, why don't we follow this demon and see what tricks their alliance master Lian Feng has?" Okay. Zhang Jie nodded slightly and looked at Du Peng. At this moment, Du Peng hurriedly waved his hand and said, "Senior, please don't use any magical powers." Since Zhang Jie had listened to Xiaohua's words, of course he would not use any magical powers, but he asked softly, "Why?" Firstly, there are many soul beasts of the sorcerer god in the Wuming mountain range. Who knows if there are any particularly powerful ones? Du Peng explained. If we attract them, it will be disadvantageous to this trip. Of course, this is not the most important thing. The most important thing is, during this period of time in the Wuming mountain range, I will be training 50,000 cultivators. Although most of these cultivators are disciples of the younger generation, they have never been here personally. Not only do they not know the dangers of this place, but they also do not cooperate well with each other. Only after they have gone through this period of training can they cooperate well with each other, and only then can we safely pass through the transmission channel in the Wuming mountain range. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, donate it, and... Chapter 50-21. Alright. Zhang Jie nodded helplessly, and was about to fly away again. "Senior." Du Peng hurriedly called out. "Don't worry. If you leave, I won't be able to contact you. If there were any abnormalities, wouldn't it affect our plans?" Zhang Jie hesitated. She looked at the humans in the distance with undisguised disgust. As an angel of the Holy Light Realm, she didn't even look down on humans in the mortal realm. How could she tolerate these humans who had been possessed by demons? She said coldly, "Although we have a cooperation agreement, I have my own bottom line. If you want to reach the Lost Land alive, don't create any more trouble." After saying that, Zhang Jie turned around and turned into a white light, shooting into the sky and disappearing in a moment. Damn it! Du Peng gritted his teeth and only dared to curse in his heart. He then turned to look at the demons and nascent soul cultivators who were frightened by the holy aura of the Holy Light Realm in Zhang Jie's body and smiled. "Everyone, did you see that? We're not the only ones who want to go to the Lost Land. There are many seniors and experts, and they can't pass through the Wuming mountain range alone. They still have to rely on us to defeat the Immortal Alliance. So don't worry. With such help, we'll have a better chance of passing through the Wuming mountain range and entering the Lost Land." Then, under Du Peng's command, the 50,000 cultivators followed the plan in an orderly manner, avoiding the powerful soul beasts and continuing to move forward. As for Xiaohua, he thought to himself, "Damn it, an angel as strong as Zhang Jie also tried to find a way to pass through the Wuming mountain range, but she couldn't pass through it. Instead, she chose to cooperate with Du Peng, who was possessed by a demon. Why should I act rashly? Why don't I just follow behind them and see what different methods they have? Furthermore, the time spent in the Wuming mountain range is also very precious. Instead of killing all the demons and rushing to the Wuming mountain range, why don't we use this time to distribute the good seeds and millet seeds to the Yilin continent and the Wuming mountain range, and save more people?" "Haha, this Zhang Jie is interesting." The Thunderbolt Immortal laughed. "When she met us that day, she was hesitant and didn't say anything. I thought she had some secrets. So it turns out that she's working with the demons, and is afraid that we'll find out. For the Holy Light Realm to be able to stand on equal footing with the Buddhist kingdom, they naturally have their own strengths." Methria Buddha World Honored One also said, "This angel is similar to my Buddha nation's Arhut. She's not good at lying. Whatever she says should be true. Hee, there's no need to care about others." Xiaohua said with a smile, "Everyone, I will be feigning civility here. I cannot leave as I please. The important task of distributing rice seeds and millet seeds will be handed over to everyone." "Haha, it's all right." Huang Tong laughed heartily. "Now that we have reached the grand completion stage, we can travel across the Yilin mainland in a flash. Fellow Taoist, you only need to ask the Fortune Gate disciples to prepare the seeds." Between saving people and killing demons, Xiaohua easily chose to save people. In the following days, Xiaohua coldly watched as ancestor Yuji and the others discussed how to kill him and how to conquer the lost land. He also slowly approached the core of the Wuming Mountain Range with the Immortal Alliance's disciples. As for the Thunderbolt Immortal, Taoist Witch, and the others, they took the seeds and millet seeds prepared by the Fortune Gate disciples and used the space escape technique to travel to various parts of the Yilin mainland. The heavenly beings even took the Kunlun mirror and led many Fortune Gate disciples to distribute the seeds. In just a few months, Taoist Master Zhao's reputation had spread like wildfire in the Donrain mainland. Only the Heaven Alliance and the Tao Alliance were not able to reconcile immediately. After all, the Tao Alliance had Old Man Gu Qiong, Taoist Ji Yan, and the Heaven Alliance had Bright Moon Householder and the Yi family's ancestor. The two super immortal alliances had other interests to deal with and had to compromise. However, after the Heaven Sacrificial Abyss was unsealed, the Heaven Alliance and the Tao Alliance's cultivators began to interact with each other. The hostility that had been frozen for many years finally began to thaw. Xiaohua's name naturally replaced Zhang Xiaohua's name under Old Man Gu Qiong and Bright Moon Householder's intentions. Of course, Old Man Gu Qiong and Bright Moon Householder obeyed Xiaohua's instructions and did not dare to say much about his origins and whereabouts. They only said that Taoist Master Xiao was a senior from the Yilin mainland who had traveled the world in his early years. Now that he had returned, he was moved by his benevolence and had passed on a modified cultivation technique. In order to reassure the Yilin mainland's cultivators, Xiaohua had gradually become the spokesperson of the Tao ancestor and the Tao venerate under the two immortal alliances' influence. The cultivation technique was also bestowed by the Tao ancestor and the Tao venerate. The Thunderbolt Immortal and the others had traveled the Yilin mainland and naturally heard these rumors. They also guessed the thoughts of the two immortal alliances' leaders and laughed it off. After all, Xiaohua needed the power of faith. Moreover, the Tao ancestor and the Tao venerate had indeed bestowed Tao seeds. With these two Tao seeds, Xiaohua could complete the modification of the nascent soul cultivation technique and the nascent soul cultivation technique in a short period of time. Therefore, these rumors on the Yilin mainland could be considered to be true. Xiaohua and his doppelgangers were in full swing to save the world. The Yilin mainland's Immortal Alliance also approached the Wuming mountain range in an orderly manner. After leaving the Changchang Plains, they began to enter the depths of the Wuming mountain range. The mountain peaks were getting higher and higher, and the abyss would appear from time to time. Many swamps, deep ponds, and miasma filled the area. However, these were nothing in Du Peng's eyes because the Yilin mainland's Immortal Alliance had already left disciples in the mountain range. Every time they arrived at a new place, Du Peng would release a special messaging talisman. Before long, the disciples of the Yilin mainland's Immortal Alliance would come out to meet him and lead the 50,000 cultivators into the depths of the mountain range. Of course, there would always be accidents. Sometimes, after the messaging talisman was released, no disciples came over. Du Peng had no choice but to brace himself and barge in. There were also times when powerful soul beasts would appear in originally safe places, and the strength of these soul beasts would far surpass the divine incarnation level. And sometimes, an indescribable astronomical phenomenon would appear, and the Wuming mountain range would have a natural disaster that even Du Peng couldn't avoid. Therefore, seeing the gloomy sky getting closer and closer, the Yilin mainland's Immortal Alliance disciples and several thousand nascent soul cultivators also lost 30% of their numbers. However, as the saying goes, good people don't live long, but evil people live for 100 years. Those few people who would send voice transmissions to Xiaohua's ears from time to time, saying some dirty things, such as Ancestor Yuji, Master Du Shi, Shi Qing, and Huang Qufan, didn't lose a single one. They were all alive and kicking. At this time, Xiaohua already didn't have the time to care about these little flies, because after passing through the Changchang Plains, the entire Wuming mountain range began to give birth to a kind of heavy pressure. Like the dark clouds before a rainstorm, it accumulated bit by bit and slowly pressed down on Xiaohua's heart, entangling Xiaohua's Naiwan palace, and entangling Xiaohua's quasi-ninth tribulation scattered nascent soul. As Xiaohua's body moved forward, his supernatural powers were slowly confined. Xiaohua was like this, and so were his doppelgangers. Not only did they activate the space escape technique, but even the position of space gradually became blurred. In the end, except for Taoist Witch, the other doppelgangers simply hid in Xiaohua's body and didn't come out again. Compared to Xiaohua, Taoist Witch was much better. He was born as a witch and cultivated a witch body, so the influence of the Wuming mountain range's innate restriction was much smaller. When they were about to reach the core of the Wuming mountain range, Taoist Witch stopped and went back into Xiaohua's body. Even Taoist Witch found it difficult to move, so Xiaohua didn't dare to be careless. He took out the Kunlun mirror, sword gourd, and other items from the space and put them in his arms, in case of emergency. After placing the magic treasure, Xiaohua thought for a moment and waved his hand again. A thumb-sized translucent ring fell into his hand. It was a crystal skull. As soon as the crystal skull appeared in the Wuming mountain range, a layer of mist immediately appeared on the crystal skull. The mist gradually filled the skull, and the illusion of the untainted land and the blood sea and the dried bones alternated between the untainted land and the blood sea. This crystal skull ring was given to Xiaohua by Elder Jianji of the Hutu Stockade after he returned from Wushan Ridge in the depths of the Million Meng Mountains. He said that it was the Witch King's Witch King token, and he invited Xiaohua to visit Wushan Ridge when he was free. He said that there would be things that Xiaohua couldn't imagine. Now that Xiaohua was going to pass through the heaven and earth restriction formation, he would be on the other side of the Million Meng Mountains. If there were no accidents, he would be in the depths of the Wuming mountain range, and most likely Wushan Ridge. Therefore, Xiaohua took out the crystal skull ring and wore it on his right finger. On this day, less than 30,000 cultivators regrouped and flew to a place filled with dark brown sand. Then they stopped. Du Ping carefully took out a fist-sized magical item. The magical item was shaped like a toad, and it was still being activated by his magic power. The toad turned into a dark green shadow and rushed into the ground, disappearing from sight. Du Peng ordered through the token, "Everyone, let's take a rest." Thus, Xiaohua and the others descended and found a place to rest. Damn it, we've been flying for so long, but we still haven't reached the teleportation tunnel, and we haven't even seen a trace of the lost land. As soon as Patriarch Yuji landed, she immediately took out a jade bottle from her bosom and threw a pill into her mouth. While refining the pill, she cursed under her breath. "If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have come here." That's right. Venomous monk Dusher looked around, his eyes filled with resentment. What kind of place is this? Not only is the heaven and earth energy thin, I can't even use my storage ring. My nascent soul is now trapped in my dantian, and I can't move it at all. If a soul beast appears, how am I supposed to deal with it? Xiaohua put on an act and took out a pill and threw it into his mouth. He squinted his eyes and looked around. Although it was afternoon, the sun wasn't hanging above their heads. Layers upon layers of indescribable gloominess covered the sky, thicker than the dark clouds. Within that gloominess, there seemed to be layers upon layers of mountains, and also seemed to be surging waves. In the surroundings where Xiaohua and the others were standing, the air was also suffused with a kind of stifling pressure. Others might not be able to see it, but Xiaohua could see it clearly. Waves of cryptic fluctuations that were similar to that of a magic array were floating down, filling up the space and blocking the void. Not to mention the teleportation of a supreme cultivator. Even Xiaohua's spatial escape technique was unable to tear apart this flying silk. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support it, cast a monthly vote, cast a recommendation vote, collect a collection, gift, and thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 50-22. What made Xiaohua feel somewhat gratified was that although he had yet to reach a higher level of mastery in his light escape technique, as he flew he could still see patches of brilliance like clouds in the sky. It was just that these clouds were much thinner than the clouds outside the Wuming mountain range. This might not be enough to hide Xiaohua's figure, but it was enough to show that the light escape technique had a unique use under the restrictions of this world. The fluctuations here are indeed different from the three great forbidden arrays that this Xiao passed through all those years ago. As Xiaohua looked at the fluctuations that were everywhere in the surroundings, he pondered to himself. Looks like it's a different type of forbidden array from that immortal array. However, these fluctuations contain the power of mountains, soul power, and netherworld power. It's really similar to a soul formation. The problem is, since this is the Wuming Mountain Range, which is also the origin of soul cultivators, why would an almighty sorcerer separate the Wuming Mountain Range from the millions of Meng Mountains? Could it be that the separation of soul cultivators wasn't caused by someone, but by the power of heaven and earth? Also, these innate fluctuations seem to vary from person to person. If the confinement force I'm suffering right now were to fall on those gold core cultivators of the Defeat You Immortal Union, wouldn't they have been crushed to death? Oh, also, when nearly 30,000 cultivators were moving together, the pressure of heaven and earth seemed to have decreased a lot. Now that everyone is resting, I actually feel as if there is a huge mountain pressing down on me from the sky. I can't even move. No wonder people as strong as Long Shenxi and Bright Moon Householder didn't dare to take risks in the Wuming Mountain Range. No wonder Du Peng wants to organize 50,000 cultivators to break through the Wuming Mountain Range. While Xiaohua was thinking, a voice rang in his ears. Hey brat, come here for a moment. Xiaohua was stunned. He stopped thinking and turned around to look at the source of the voice. Wasn't it Huang Chufan who was looking at him with his bell-sized eyes? Along the way, although Huang Chufan did not transmit his voice, every time he mentioned something, Ancestor Jade Fat, Venomous Master Poison Stone, and Shurqing would clearly explain it to him. It was as if Huang Chufan was the leader of this group. Xiaohua didn't know what evil deeds Huang Chufan had done, but he heard Huang Chufan's voice transmission and the order he issued. Xiaohua also knew that this guy wasn't a good person. Therefore, Xiaohua only glanced at Huang Chufan indifferently. He didn't have any intention of moving, as if he didn't hear anything. Damn it! Huang Chufan was furious. He looked at the unremarkable cultivator who had ignored everyone along the way, and didn't even say a word. He scolded. I just asked for a medicinal pill from you. How dare you treat me like this? Huang Chufan's words had actually given Xiaohua a way out. If it were any other place in the Wuming Mountain Range, Huang Chufan would have already killed him. Why would he need to state his purpose of speaking? Unfortunately, how could Xiaohua give him this face? Xiaohua still acted as if he didn't hear him. This time he didn't even bother to look at him. Who? Huang Chufan immediately stood up and was about to fly toward Xiaohua. The group leader named Yu Shuicheng already had an impression of these people's characters and temperaments. At this moment, he hastily flew up and said with a smile, Senior Huang, Senior Xiao might be tired. Junior has some medicinal pills here. Senior, please give me some face. As he spoke, Shuicheng took out a jade bottle from his bosom and handed it over with a smile on his face. Get lost. Huang Chufan was obviously angry. With a low roar, he waved his right hand and a strange force suddenly appeared and hit Shuicheng's chest. Shuicheng didn't expect that Huang Chufan would make a move just like that. Moreover, in a place where his nascent soul was imprisoned, he was still able to use a secret technique. He was careless and was hit by the force. His body rolled and fell into the sand on the ground. Shuicheng didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly picked up the token and prepared to send a message. But at this moment his eyes fell on the sand beside him. He saw that the sand was slightly trembling and rotating, rolling towards a depression, as if the earth was silently shaking. Shuicheng seemed to think of something. His face was filled with fear. Black qi immediately surged around his body. He no longer concealed his devil cultivation. He turned into a bloody shadow and rushed into the sky, shouting, Mirage, it's the mirage of the sorcerer. Shuicheng was so shocked that he forgot to activate the token, but his devil qi was particularly conspicuous in the eyes of everyone. Although Shuicheng was very far away from Du Peng saw it at a glance. His face changed drastically, and he cursed angrily and was about to fly over. However, when Du Peng heard Shuicheng shout, Shaman God's Mirage, his expression changed drastically. He couldn't be bothered to punish and berate Shuicheng. Instead, he shook the token in his hand. He didn't care whether the token had been activated or not as he shouted loudly, Disciples, quickly leave this place. After that, Du Peng hurriedly flew away into the distance. Moreover, just as Du Peng flew away, he hurriedly sent a voice transmission to the sky. Senior, help! Senior, help! Obviously, Du Peng knew this mirage very well, and knew that he was no match for it. Shui Chang's panic and Du Peng's panic were all seen in the eyes of the disciples. The disciples of the Defeat Valley Immortal Union flew up from their resting place, and shouted to the surroundings. When Shui Chang was sent flying by Huang Chufan, Xiaohua was quietly standing on top of a rock. He looked at Huang Chufan, who was angrily flying towards him, as if he was scared silly. Shui Chang shouted and rushed into the sky to escape. Huang Chufan had already raised his fist, and the stone pillar-like arm broke through the air, making a boom 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 sound. Xiaohua didn't doubt that if he was an ordinary nascent soul cultivator, and his nascent soul was now imprisoned by the restriction of the Wuming mountain range, this punch would definitely smash his head. You brought this upon yourself, you can't live. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and looked at the fist coming towards him. He didn't have any intention of dodging, and only said coldly, "Mirage." Shui Chang's exclamation came into Huang Chufan's ears at this time. Huang Chufan obviously didn't know what mirage was. His expression was only slightly stunned, and even the fist that was smashing towards Xiaohua's head didn't stop. However, just when Huang Chufan had an evil grin on his face, and saw that his fist was about to land on Xiaohua's head, and that seemingly unyielding iron bone was about to be smashed by him, a strange gust of wind suddenly emerged from the ground below Huang Chufan. The gravel that was still spiraling and trembling a moment ago suddenly soared into the sky. A yellow-brown shadow that was at least several hundred zhang in size rose from the ground, and swept towards Xiaohua and Huang Chufan. What made Huang Chufan feel strange was that there was no special sound where this shadow broke through the air. There were even several extremely sharp suction forces in the nearby space, and 3 to 5 gusts of wind blew towards the light shadow. However, all the vigilance of a nascent soul cultivator was born in Huang Chufan's heart at this time. He clearly knew that the light shadow was the so-called mirage. Moreover, if he insisted on killing Xiaohua, he would also be injured under the mirage's light shadow. Therefore, Huang Chufan didn't hesitate anymore. He didn't care about killing Xiaohua and hurriedly urged his body to follow the direction of the light shadow's attack and rush towards the sky. However, what made Huang Chufan surprised was that Xiaohua, who was also enveloped by the mirage's light shadow, still had a faintly discernible sneer on his face, and his body didn't move at all. Is this guy really stupid? Huang Chufan didn't understand, but in just a moment, Huang Chufan knew who the real fool was. Because just as he flew out a few dozen feet, the huge light shadow that was born from the ground suddenly disappeared, and above his head, a tentacle that was only a few dozen feet long suddenly appeared out of thin air. This tentacle was full of sharp spikes that were several feet long, and between the spikes, there were several vortex-like black holes. The sharp sound of wind and the suction force were emitted from these black holes, and just as Huang Chufan's gaze swept past, a strange light shadow flashed from the edge of the black holes. That light shadow was like a dozen huge tentacles that emerged from the space near Huang Chufan, and fell towards Huang Chufan and Xiaohua. Damn it! Huang Chufan immediately understood that the previous light shadow on the ground was an illusion, and the tentacles that fell from the sky were the real killer. Huang Chufan rushed up with all his strength, and the tentacles of the mirage fell with all their strength. In particular, the tentacles of the mirage streaked across the air at an extremely fast speed, and there wasn't much sound. When Huang Chufan came to his senses, the sharp tentacles had already approached, and the biting cold had already been transmitted from the spikes of the tentacles, causing Huang Chufan's whole body to be covered in a layer of cold sweat in this scorching afternoon. His nascent soul was imprisoned, and he couldn't use teleportation, and the amount of true essence that could be activated was also very little. Huang Chufan steeled his heart, and the muscles in his arms twitched with a piu-piu sound. A force that was fiercer than the one that attacked Xiaohua just now was generated from Huang Chufan's arms, and his arms instantly became a little thicker. Huang Chufan raised his arms, as if he was raising fire to burn the sky, and wanted to rely on the 8-9 mysteries that he secretly cultivated to avoid this disaster. Pooh! The tentacles of the mirage fell, And Huang Chufan's 8-9 mysteries golden body that he painstakingly cultivated was like paper. The spikes easily pierced Huang Chufan's arms, and the tentacles streaked past, breaking the bones and flesh of Huang Chufan's arms. Ah! Huang Chufan screamed in pain, and his body actually wanted to fly backward with the help of the force. However, before he could fly, the vortex-like black hole above the tentacles poked out with a woo. A skull that looked like a skeleton stretched out. The skull passed through the flying flesh and blood like lightning, and fell on the top of Huang Chufan's head. Pooh! There was another muffled sound. The small head of the mirage smashed Huang Chufan's head, and went straight into his body. The look of disbelief in Huang Chufan's eyes disappeared like a lamp being extinguished, and his body fell into the air. However, things didn't go as planned. Just as Huang Chufan's body fell, the small head above the tentacles of the mirage retracted from the top of Huang Chufan's head. On the small skull-like head, a nascent soul with tightly closed eyes was held in the skull's mouth. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and reward it. Thank you for all kinds of support. Chapter 50-23. Even death can't wipe out his crimes. Xiao Hua said indifferently. His figure didn't stay at the same spot as he landed on the ground, because right above Xiao Hua's head, another tentacle strangely appeared, and chopped towards the spot where Xiao Hua originally stood. From Shui Chang's warning to Huang Chufan being killed by the sea serpent's tentacle, only a few breaths of time had passed. The other groups of cultivators who were fleeing in panic might not have noticed this tragic scene, but Ancestor Yu Ji, Venomous Stone, and Shiqing saw it clearly. The three of them almost simultaneously had an unimaginable feeling in their hearts. How is this possible? However, just because this thought appeared, it didn't mean that the three of them weren't afraid. Although their movements were a bit slower than Men Xiaifeng and Hui Jin's group, when they moved their bodies, they also flew back more than 100 zhang and fled back the way they came. Just as they flew away, several tentacles streaked past where they were standing one after another, but they all missed. If the three of them hesitated for half a second, perhaps they would have the same ending as Huang Chufan. Lucky! The three of them looked at Dian Hongji and the others who were following them, and couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Ancestor Yu Ji and the others were lucky to escape, but the cultivators in other places didn't have such good luck. Countless tentacles of different sizes appeared out of thin air, enveloping the nearby space. Like the sickles used by farmers to harvest leeks, they wantonly killed the cultivators. Pitiful screams could be heard one after another. What was special was that at this moment, the earth began to tremble violently. A ravine that was several thousand zhang long split open on the ground. A huge soul beast with countless strange soul imprints on its body squeezed out of this ravine. The countless tentacles that were harvesting life came from this body. The soul beast looked like a huge tree branch as it slowly rushed out of the ground. Countless tiny pitch-black fog mixed with the smell of blood permeated the air like ink. A netherworld aura that made people lose their souls soared into the sky, rapidly spreading in all directions. The originally hot and humid weather instantly turned cold, as if they had fallen into an ice cave. Sorcerer God? Xiao Hua looked at the aura around the soul beast's tentacles, and the netherworld energy around the tentacles. Unconsciously, a cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth as he thought to himself. You only have the strength of an 8th grade elemental energy, yet you dare to be called a sorcerer god. Gigi. The soul beast flew out, and its entire body slightly trembled. Outside its surface, strands of dark green light appeared. Under the light, natural patterns appeared. These patterns were very similar to the green seal text. When the soul beast trembled, it let out a shrill sound. This sound echoed in the air, and gave birth to an effect similar to the green seal text. Waves of strange wind blades fell from the sky like flying swords and pierced towards the fleeing disciples of the Defeat Oak Immortal Alliance. Forget it. Xiao Hua's current cultivation had already surpassed the soul beast's perception, so the tentacles didn't attack Xiao Hua. However, seeing the entire scene in such a sorry state, Xiao Hua didn't have the interest to continue watching the show. He sighed and raised his right hand. about to slap his own forehead. Right at this moment, he heard tens of millions of milky white light strands appear in the air to his left like swimming fish. Then waves of ee-ya-ya singing could be heard. Although the light strands were small and faint, after they fell, they were like flowing water that slowly washed away the netherworld aura of the soul beast's tentacles. What was special was that the singing voice sounded wholly deep, and even like the voice of a child. However, where the singing voice passed, the mournful sound of the green seal text ghosts was immediately covered up. The wind blades that could easily kill a golden core cultivator actually turned into a cool breeze in an instant. See, Xiaohua stood in the air and looked at this somewhat strange scene. He sucked in a breath of cold air. This angel of the holy light realm. Could it be that he's the natural nemesis of soul cultivators? That day, when Zhang Jie was bound by the laws of heaven and earth of the Yilin continent, the divine ability he used was only fleeting. This Xiaohua didn't see the specific power, because on the Yilin continent, the battle strength of an angel is only SOSO. Now, it seems that the divine ability of an angel is far from what this Xiaohua thought. This Xiaohua has to have a whole new level of respect for Zhang Jie's divine ability. Since the angel Zhang Jie took action, Xiaohua naturally didn't need to reveal his divine ability. He just stood in a hidden place and watched. Since the soul beast's tentacles were called the sorcerer god, they naturally had their own strong points. Seeing that its wind blades were destroyed, it couldn't help but be furious. The huge body of the soul beast's tentacles suddenly trembled again, and its whole body rose and fell like the waves of the sea. Along with this rise and fall, the sound of the green seal text from before became more and more resounding. In particular, the thousands of tentacles were suffused with a bloody light, and the rich aura of the netherworld's blood sea rushed out from this bloody light. The aura of the nether blood sea was naturally the aura of death. However, it had just been born, yet everything within 1,000 miles had already withered. The disciples of the Immortal Alliance who had been desperately trying to escape earlier had now fallen one by one like scallions. Rumble! Xiaohua slightly frowned. Lightning surged around his body, and he was just about to take action. Woo. At this time, the hymn that was suppressed by the green seal text suddenly became resounding, like a passionate battle song. At the same time, the holy light from before also suddenly condensed, thickened, and strengthened. It was like thousands of troops rushing out from all directions, encircling and suppressing the soul beast's tentacles. However, just as this holy light covered the aura of death emitted by the soul beast's tentacles, it immediately stopped. The holy light condensed in the vicinity of 1,000 li, and unexpectedly revealed a strange land like a vineyard. Inside the vineyard, bunches of grapes were full and condensed. The scene of a harvest was clear at a glance. Shua! A 7-colored pillar fell from the sky and shone on the vineyard. Under the pillar of light, a beautiful impatience flower was revealed. The impatience flower's charm was outstanding, and it slightly swayed in the mountain wind. Little bits of holy light sprinkled over the entire vineyard like seeds. Yeah. The hymn gradually faded, and the impatience flower slowly withered. The grapes in the vineyard also rotted and disappeared. The holy light penetrated layer by layer and entangled with the aura of the netherworld's blood sea. This penetration was so firm that the soul beast's tentacles couldn't stop it at all. The soul beast seemed to feel that something was wrong, and its huge body trembled again. And the surroundings became colder and colder. Some ice shards actually appeared in the originally hot air. Boom! Just as the holy light was about to disappear, the 7-colored holy light shone brightly. The originally withered impatience flower grew again, but at this time, in the entire vineyard, countless seeds instantly sprouted, and a powerful life force washed away the netherworld's blood sea like spring water. And Xiaohua could clearly see that inside the impatience flower, Angel Zhang Jie was fluttering his 7 layers of light feathers and slowly dancing. A kind of pious, holy, and pure aura was born from the light feathers and dance, and it was even more dense than the spring rain that moistened everything within 1,000 li. Those originally unconscious disciples of the Failure Valley Immortal Union woke up one by one. They were somewhat shocked as they looked at the holy light rippling around their bodies, and were at a loss. Looking at the soul beast's tentacles again, it was irritable at first, but as Angel Zhang Jie danced and the hymn lingered, It actually calmed down. Not only did the netherworld's aura gradually fade, those sharp and elusive tentacles also withdrew into the soul beast's body, and like the cold and ice shards of the severe winter, it also disappeared like the wind, and a piece of warmth, a piece of peace. He walked through the valley of death, where his feet stepped, death could not defeat him. He came from the heavenly kingdom of resurrection, where his hands touched, resurrection descended upon the earth. Angel Zhang Jie seemed to be singing, his voice was gentle, and every word seemed to fall into everyone's heart. Even the soul beast's tentacles began to slowly withdraw its body. Life force. This is the power of life. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and looked at the holy light flowing in the air. He looked at the strands of indistinct yet tenacious power of life and thought inwardly. Not only does this holy light contain the power of faith, it also contains the power of life. What's special is that it is a kind of life force that has experienced death. It is indeed somewhat mysterious. This mystery is not something this Xiao can understand now. Moreover, this holy light is definitely not what this Xiao thought before. When it fell into the bodies of these humans who were possessed by the demon race, it actually could not kill the demon race. If not for Angel Zhangjie's kind heart, and not willing to casually kill, even if the other party was a demon race. That is to say, the holy light is still somewhat different from the Buddha's light. If the Buddha's light fell into the bodies of these defeated immortal allies, they will definitely fight with the demon race. After the hymn finished, Angel Zhangjie also withdrew the 7 dancing light feathers, and the holy light that filled the sky gradually disappeared. The soul beast's tentacles also obediently fell to the ground, and gradually disappeared without a trace. Senior. Du Peng was somewhat afraid of the holy light, but he still braced himself and flew to a place not far from Zhangjie, bowed and said, "This junior thanks senior for saving their lives on behalf of the tens of thousands of disciples." The floating holy light fell into the angel's body, and Zhangjie's figure and cold appearance appeared again. Zhangjie glanced at Du Peng and replied, "No need to thank me. Even if I did not help, you all would have been fine. Senior is too polite." Du Peng did not understand what Zhangjie meant, but he did not dare to ask too much, and said carefully, "If not for senior, we all would have died this time." Unfortunately, Zhangjie did not wait for Du Peng to finish, and interrupted him asking, "When will we reach the teleportation tunnel?" "According to the plan, there are still..." Du Peng peeked at Zhangjie's expression and whispered, "There are still 3 more months." 3 more months? Zhangjie did not get angry as Du Peng imagined, but slightly frowned, and 7 colors appeared in his eyes as he looked around and said, "We are already close to the cutting blade ridge. Why do we still need 3 more months?" "Senior," Du Peng hurriedly replied, "the closer we are to the cutting blade ridge, the stronger the soul beasts are. This junior does not have any disciples here, so everything depends on this junior and the others to move forward by themselves. Therefore, we may have to take a long detour. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it as a reward, and..." Chapter 50-24. Zhangjie stared at the gray haze in the distance. After a moment of thought he said, "We're already in the depths of the Wuming mountain range. The path you've taken is very ingenious. You've managed to evade many powerful soul beasts and soul cultivators. However, that soul beast has already exposed your existence. My ability will also attract their attention. If you don't hurry to the tunnel in time, I'm afraid they'll chase after you. Senior." Du Peng's face turned ugly. He bit his lip and begged, "It's not that I don't want to speed up. It's because we need to see the time to activate the tunnel." "What? We need to see the time?" Zhangjie didn't understand. "What time?" "The tunnel doesn't always exist," Du Peng explained. "That's why you didn't discover the tunnel when you came here before. The teleportation tunnel can only appear at certain times and under certain conditions. So you've been flying for more than a year just to wait for that specific time?" Zhangjie asked. "And if we don't meet the special conditions, we still can't activate the tunnel? If that's the case, why didn't you say so earlier?" Du Peng saw that Zhangjie was getting angry. He smiled and said, Senior, please don't be anxious. I didn't mean to hide anything from you. The specific time and specific conditions, my Liu Immortal Union already knows. This is the basis for Junior's cooperation with Senior. Senior doesn't need to worry about it. Moreover, Junior has been preparing for this for hundreds of years. Senior, please rest assured. Actually, to tell you the truth, some disciples of my Defeat Immortal Alliance have already arrived at the Lost Grounds through this teleportation tunnel. Otherwise, I wouldn't dare to vow to cooperate with Senior. We're just using each other, Zhang Jie said. There's no need to talk about cooperation. I'm ashamed to be in your team. He didn't know if Du Peng was cursing him in his heart, but he didn't dare to show it on his face. He smiled and said, Senior, please hold on for a few more months. We'll be there soon. Sai, let's go that way. Zhang Jie pointed in a direction. There aren't any powerful soul beasts there. Yes, thank you, Senior. Du Peng was overjoyed. He quickly thanked Zhang Jie and ordered his disciples to regroup. Haha, there is a limit to a person's patience. If they know that it is impossible within 100 years, they will not ask any more questions within 100 years. Xiao Hua heard it clearly from afar and laughed inwardly, but if he knew that it was possible within a few days, then he wouldn't even be able to wait a day. Although Zhang Jie is an angel of the Holy Light Realm, it's the same. From Du Peng's tone, Zhang Jie has been waiting in the Yiling continent for hundreds of years in order to go to the Lost Lands. But today, she can't even wait for 3 months. However, it's no wonder that Taoist priest Wu and Huang Tong didn't find anything the last time they came to Wuming Mountain. It turns out that the teleportation tunnel can only appear under special conditions, and at special times. It's just that I don't know what this special time and condition is that it took Du Peng hundreds of years to prepare. The appearance of the spirit beast clam, sea serpent caused another 10% of the disciples of the failure Immortal Union to die. In Xiaohua's group, Huang Chufan and Ancestor Yuji died, and they were replaced by a female cultivator named Lan Yuxuan, and a male cultivator named Su Luyue. Among the 3 Golden Core disciples, Dian Hongji and Su Pei died, and 2 Golden Core disciples named Yi Ping and Zhang Qi were added. Xiao Hua understood that Bai Fei and Yi Yun were safe and sound. Even Beauty Yu and Zhuang Chen were still alive and well. Bai Fei not dying was not out of Xiao Hua's expectations. It would be strange if such a person who sought advantages and avoided disadvantages also died among tens of thousands of people. However, Yi Yun, who was in the Golden Core realm, was also not injured. Xiao Hua was a little surprised. It seemed that Bai Fei took good care of Yi Yun. Xiao Hua had a better impression of Bai Fei, because in his eyes, a person who could be wholeheartedly devoted to his lover, no matter how bad he was, couldn't be that bad. Of course, people like Tu Hong were still an exception. After the team was reorganized, half of the cultivators were lost. The remaining 25,000 cultivators set off again. 3 months passed in the blink of an eye. During this time, because of Zhang Jie's guidance, they didn't encounter any more soul beasts. Moreover, because they were near the Broken Blade Ridge, which was the most powerful core of the Heaven and Earth restriction, not only were the natives of the Wuming Mountain range rare, but even soul cultivators rarely came. Zhang Jie's divine ability might have been discovered by powerful soul cultivators, but no one came to investigate. Of course, the ignorant were fearless. Even if the 24,999 cultivators didn't sense any danger, and happily flew towards the Broken Blade Ridge, Xiao Hua couldn't help but be frightened. He and Zhang Jie both had a cautious look on their faces because they clearly sensed that within tens of thousands of kilometers, there were 4 soul beasts of unknown strength sleeping. Moreover, the aura of these soul beasts was very weak. If Xiao Hua didn't fly slowly, he wouldn't have noticed it. Damn it, could it be that the special time that Du Peng mentioned is the period when these soul beasts are sleeping? Xiao Hua carefully withdrew his wisp of soul consciousness and secretly cursed in his heart. There are 4 soul beasts of unknown strength within tens of thousands of kilometers. Who knows how many more there are in other places? It's hard to imagine the ambition of Alliance Master Lian Feng of the Thump Immortal Union. He actually sent these Golden Core and nascent soul disciples to their deaths. As long as these soul beasts wake up, a yawn from them could turn these tens of thousands of disciples into ashes. The Broken Blade Ridge was already very close. It was as if one could reach out and touch the coldness of the mountain rocks. However, Xiaohua didn't act rashly. Like the other disciples of the Thump Immortal Union, he was still in groups of 10 and stopped to rest several kilometers away from the Broken Blade Ridge. It was slightly different from the previous rest. The 10 people in each group were strictly ordered not to stray too far away. It seemed that the special condition that Du Peng mentioned could be fulfilled at any time. The 20,000 cultivators could enter the transmission tunnel at any time. Xiaohua frowned as he looked at the Broken Blade Ridge not far away. A strange expression appeared on his face. The Broken Blade Ridge looked very ordinary. It was a towering mountain range that stretched for tens of thousands of kilometers. There were no shrubs or vines on the mountain range, only green mountain rocks. There was nothing special about the mountain rocks. There were cracks and faults on it, and it looked no different from an ordinary mountain range. What was special was that although the mountain range was tall, it was only 1,000 feet. Not to mention Xiaohua. Even Bai Fei could see the peak of the mountain with a glance. However, the peak of the mountain wasn't the end of one's vision. On the peak of the mountain, the gloomy gray that seemed to have substance connected the sky with the mountain peak. Not to mention that it was difficult for people to climb to the peak. Even cultivators found it difficult to fly to the peak. Even their vision was blocked by the gray nothingness. Xiaohua didn't know how others felt. He stood there and felt like he couldn't breathe. It was as if the entire sky above the Yilin continent had collapsed to the sky above the Broken Blade Ridge. It was as if the entire Yilin continent's boundary was condensed here, blocking in front of his head. The Broken Blade Ridge was similar to the place where Huang Tong and Taoist priest Wu had been before. However, the location wasn't here, but somewhere far away. However, the Broken Blade Ridge was the same as what Huang Tong had seen. There was a kind of dejection that couldn't be overcome. Moreover, there were only strands of fluctuations in the Wuming mountain range. Now it had condensed into a giant mountain that was 1,000,000 times bigger and more powerful than the Broken Blade Ridge. It separated the entire heaven and earth. The thin radiance that Xiaohua had sensed earlier had already been torn to shreds here, turning into strands and wisps. Not to mention Xiaohua's body. Even if Xiaohua moved, this radiance would shatter. Under the incomparably solemn power of heaven and earth, Xiaohua felt like he was an ant. He could only look up at it. A feeling of powerlessness rose from the bottom of his heart. In particular, Xiaohua's strength and supernatural powers that had surpassed the 9th level of essence power were completely suppressed under this restriction. He couldn't sense space, and spatial artifacts such as storage rings couldn't be used. It was as if the Broken Blade Ridge was pressing down on his shoulders, and there were several immortal binding ropes firmly binding his hands and feet. It was difficult for him to move and stay still. Damn it. Xiaohua cursed softly. He then looked at the 2 golden core cultivators beside him, Yi Ping and Zhang Qi, who could move freely. He thought to himself, no wonder the high-level cultivators of the Yilin continent were so agitated at the mention of the Wuming mountain range. No one was willing to come here. It turns out that the restriction of heaven and earth that separates the Yilin continent and the Donrain continent is much more restrictive on high-level cultivators than on low-level cultivators. Now, I'm afraid my strength is not much different from that of Du Peng. However, what's the difference between this Broken Blade Ridge and the mountain range that Huang Tong and the rest had seen before? Why did Du Peng choose this place? Thinking of this, Xiaohua couldn't help but look at the angel Zhang Jie, who was standing alone in the distance like a celestial phoenix flower. The light and shadow around Zhang Jie's body was also greatly suppressed. The originally holy robe now looked like a white dress worn by a lady from a wealthy family. It no longer had its original power. However, Zhang Jie's face still had a slight frown of confusion, just like the expression she had when she first entered the Wuming mountain range. After thinking for a moment, Xiaohua quietly activated his soul technique. The dim and almost invisible green color flowed in his body several times, and the mysterious wizard body was quietly born. As soon as the wizard body appeared, the unbearable suppression lessened a little. Xiaohua actually felt a sense of comfort. What kind of supernatural power is this? Soul cultivator? It was not beyond Xiaohua's expectations. As soon as Xiaohua's wizard body condensed, Zhang Jie's curious voice rang in Xiaohua's ears. You're a Dao sect cultivator. How can you be proficient in witchcraft? Haha, if you tell me your purpose of going to the Lost Land, I can naturally answer your question. Xiaohua was in a good mood and replied softly with a voice transmission. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it a tip, and thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 50-25. That's my secret. Zhang Jie said reluctantly. That's also my secret. Xiaohua replied with a smile. Alright. Zhang Jie had no choice but to stop asking about it. He changed the topic and asked, how do you feel after using this witchcraft? Previously, I felt like I couldn't breathe, but now I feel more at ease. Xiaohua didn't hide anything and replied. And I feel that this witchcraft can exert 40% of its power under the confinement of heaven and earth. Oh, I see. Zhang Jie nodded and said. I was wondering why the restrictive spell in the Wuming mountain range was so strange. It turns out that it was the work of soul cultivators. Could it be that there are treasures of soul cultivators in the Lost Land, and they want to prevent others from finding them? I don't think so. Xiaohua answered casually, but after saying those words, he realized something and changed the topic with a smile. Because in the Wuming mountain range, how can there be an existence that surpasses the laws of the Yilin continent? The restrictive spell in front of us seems to be more powerful than the laws of heaven and earth. So it's unlikely that it was created by soul cultivators. Also, think about it, the Wuming mountain range can't possibly end here, right? On the other side of the Broken Blade Ridge, there might be soul cultivators as well. Soul cultivators shouldn't have divided their branch of soul cultivators into two, right? You're right. Zhang Jie pondered for a moment and nodded. But I don't understand. I feel that there's something strange about this restrictive spell, but I can't tell exactly what it is. It's as if it's already at the tip of my tongue, but I've forgotten it. It's really strange. If even you don't know, then I don't know either. Xiaohua answered helplessly. Zhang Jie was an angel of the Holy Light Realm, not a human. Xiaohua naturally couldn't tell her the situation of the immortal formation between the three continents and the Dawn Rain continent. He also couldn't explain the difference between the restrictive spell and the immortal formation here. Since you've already used your soul spell, can you find any transmission tunnel here? Zhang Jie asked again. Xiaohua shook his head. I've already explored it. This restrictive spell goes straight through the heaven and earth, and it's seamless. There's no flaw at all. How can there be a transmission tunnel here? Zhang Jie was also surprised and said, I'm the same as you. I only feel that there's a mountain-like restriction in front of me. It was as if the entire sky had fallen, and there was no sign of life at all. However, the strange thing is that I once went to the sky nearby in my early years. Although the restriction was like a mountain, the wind in the sky could still blow through, and light should be able to pass through as well. However, my holy light couldn't pass through. Forget it, there's no need to probe for now. Xiaohua says with a smile. I once asked the two alliance heads of the Heaven Alliance and the Dao Alliance. They didn't know how to pass through this restriction either. Since this Du Peng said that they have a way to defeat the Immortal Alliance, and that there are people who have successfully passed, then let's just wait for them to come up with something. I don't think the words of the demon race can be trusted. Zhang Jie shook his head slightly, expressing his disappointment in the cooperation with the demon race. Then why are you still cooperating with him? Xiaohua asks back. Back then, I wanted to pass through the Wuming mountain range to go to the Lost Land. However, when I arrived at the location of this heaven and earth restriction, I couldn't move even a single step. When I was worried, I met Du Peng. He said that he had a way to pass through this restriction, but he needed my help. Zhang Jie doesn't hide too much and tells the story of the matter. I had no choice but to cooperate with him. However, this wait actually took nearly 1,000 years. Du Peng is a human who was possessed by a demon general. I don't know his character. Xiaohua thinks for a moment and says, but I know some demons. They're definitely not what you think. Unfortunately, before Xiaohua can finish, Zhang Jie decisively interrupts and says impatiently, what's so good about the demon race? They're even darker and more bloodthirsty than the human race. Don't mention it again. All right. Xiaohua shrugs and doesn't say any more. At this time, Du Peng quietly flies in front of Zhang Jie and bows. Senior, you must still remember our previous agreement? Zhang Jie looks at Du Peng in confusion and says, Of course I remember. What's wrong? It's good that Senior remembers. Du Peng sighs in relief and says with a smile, Junior is afraid that after so many years, you've forgotten. How is that possible? Zhang Jie replies indifferently, I'm a man of my word. As long as we're in the transmission tunnel, I'll help you if I can. If I can pass through the transmission tunnel, I'll definitely take you there. That's good, that's good. Du Peng obtains Zhang Jie's guarantee, and a smile appears on his face. He turns around to leave the flying boat and says, Since Senior keeps his promise, Junior will also begin to prepare. When Du Peng flies far away, he sends out an order for some disciples of the Failure Valley Immortal Union to go over. It seems like he's whispering something. Only then does Zhang Jie send a strange sound transmission. Xiaohua, what does Du Peng mean by this? Xiaohua hears this and laughs in his heart. He sends a sound transmission to Zhang Jie and says, It's very simple. Because you previously subdued the soul beast tentacle, and in these 3 months you pointed out an extremely safe path. Therefore, he's afraid that you'll raise more conditions, or that you'll treat your previous sacrifice as a condition, and reduce your previous promise to him after entering the transmission tunnel. Boring, Zhang Jie mutters in disgust. What are these demons thinking every day? If I've already agreed, how can I not keep my word? Xiaohua blushes with shame. He knows that the reason Du Peng is so worried isn't because of the demon general Ji Peng, but more because of Du Peng's own human weakness. Thinking of this, Xiaohua unconsciously looks to the other side. Bai Fei and Yi Yun are standing 3 kilometers away. Bai Fei's expression is normal, but Yi Yun's pair of eyes glances at Bai Fei from time to time. It seems that after more than a year of interaction, the two have progressed very quickly. Hee, this Bai Fei said before that if we enter the transmission tunnel together, he will lend this Xiao a hand. I wonder if he will agree? However, since we're no longer in the same group, he must have forgotten about this matter. Xiaohua ridicules in his heart. He knows that Bai Fei's words can't be taken seriously. However, just as his gaze leaves, he suddenly raises his eyebrows and returns to the space between Yi Yun's eyebrows. He says curiously, That's strange. Why is there an additional ball of yin qi between Yi Yun's eyebrows? Could it be that something went wrong with her cultivation recently? Seniors. At this moment, Shui Chong opens his mouth and says, Lord Special Envoy has already sent a message asking everyone to take out their own selection treasures. We'll be ready. Xiaohua retracts his gaze and takes out the windy wheel from his Taoist robe. Everyone beside him also takes out the treasures they obtained during the selection. Lan Yushuan takes out a copper, or that's entirely yellow in color. It's engraved with thunder patterns. When it's swung, there's no need to channel transcendence energy, and the sound of thunder will be produced. It's the famous roaring thunder ore. Venomous Master Poison Stone took out 2 palm-sized pieces of wood. The wood pieces were hollowed out in the shape of wings, and the edges of the wood pieces were engraved with strange patterns. They looked like green seal scripts, but also like Dao talismans. Xiaohua had heard Venomous Master Poison Stone say that these magic treasures were wood spirit wings. Shi Qing took out a blue stone puppet. This stone puppet was also very strange. It was covered with misty textures, and as Shi Qing waved it, countless wisps of smoke would seep out from the textures. This wisp of smoke would fall into the air and immediately disappear. There was nothing special about it, but the name Light Smoke Puppet was as good as a treasure. Su Liuyue's name sounds very poetic, but he doesn't look refined and looks similar to the fallen Huang Chufan. Hence, the Dharma treasure he's holding is the same as Huang Chufan's, the demonic red button. The demonic red button is not large, and is only a foot long. In the middle is a sacrificial ring with some demonic patterns on it, but most of them are sesame-sized black spots. The spots can't be seen with the naked eye, but by releasing one's spiritual force, one can see that under the spots are concave spots of various sizes. The concave spots are filled with talismans. With Xiaohua's knowledge, he also saw the demonic red button, but he doesn't know what it's used for. As for the nascent soul realm cultivators of the Defeat Immortal Union, Men Sifeng, and the Golden Core realm cultivators, Huijin, Yiping, and Zhangqi, they didn't take out any Dharma treasures. Instead, they walked toward Xiaohua and the others and looked at Xuechong. After Xuechong gave the order, the leaders of the other groups also began to give orders. In each group, there were either 5 Dharma treasures, 4 Dharma treasures, or 3 Dharma treasures. No one has seen only 2 Dharma treasures. Xuechong was not in a hurry to give orders again. Instead, he looked down at the token around his neck and waited for Du Peng's orders. There were some nascent soul realm cultivators near Du Peng, all of whom were disciples of the Defeat Immortal Union. When Xiaohua took a look, his heart skipped a beat because there were exactly 365 of them. Xiaohua didn't probe previously, but at this moment, Du Peng seemed to have already finished giving orders. He looked at the broken blade ridge in the distance, pinched his chin, and thought for a moment before raising his hand again. He pointed a few times at the ground near the mountain ridge, and the 365 disciples moved and landed in various places to form a Dharma array. The Dharma array was in the shape of a pentagon, and the 365 disciples stood there neatly. It seemed that the distance between each disciple was similar. Of course, nearly half of the disciples were floating in mid-air. Du Peng saw that the disciples had set up the array formation, and as they activated their dharmic powers, waves of fluctuations were emitted from the disciples. After the fluctuations gathered in the center of the Dharma array, they condensed into one and then rushed towards the broken blade ridge. Du Peng nodded in satisfaction and turned to look at the other disciples who were already prepared. He said with a smile, "Everyone, the broken blade ridge is already in front of us, and the lost place is also close at hand. If possible, we can reach the barren land of immortal cultivators at this time tomorrow. So now let's practice the teleportation flying boat." P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to the starting point to subscribe to support it, vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it a tip, and thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 50-26. Then Du Peng ordered, "Head disciples, set up the bone-flying boat and teach the control method to the disciples." Yes. Xuechong and the other disciples listened to the order. After agreeing, they reached out and took out a 1-foot-long bone from the silk bag at their waists. They each activated their magic power, and after their true qi entered the bone, a green flame emerged from the bone. A bone-flying boat that was more than 100 feet in size floated in front of Xiaohua and the others. Then, Xuechong took out a few jade slips and handed them to Xiaohua and the others. He smiled and said, "Everyone, the teleportation flying boat doesn't need to be controlled by you. What you need to do is to activate the Dharma treasures that you have obtained and cooperate with me. This jade slip contains the cooperation method. Please take a look." Du Peng is really scheming. This bone-flying boat is clearly a soul artifact, and the control and cooperation method was only taken out now. Those who were injured and withdrew couldn't have known that there was such a method. Xiaohua looked at the bone-flying boat and the jade slip in his hand and secretly thought, but he didn't say much. He used his divine sense to take a look and understood that it was nothing more than some simple spells. Then Lan Yuxuan and the other nascent soul cultivators also finished reading. Xuechong jumped onto the bone-flying boat first. After activating it with his not-so-strong soul power, the flying boat gradually began to transform. 9 skull-like deep holes appeared on it. Without waiting for Xuechong to speak, Men Shifeng, Huijin, Yiping, and Zhangqi flew up first and landed in the 4 outermost deep holes. Then Xuechong looked at Xiaohua and the others, smiled, and pointed to the remaining 5 deep holes. He said, "Senior Xiao, who controls the wind underworld wheel, please sit here. Senior Lan, who controls the thunder roar or please sit here. Senior Poison Stone, who controls the wood spirit wings, please sit here. Senior Shi, who controls the light smoke roar, please sit here. Senior Su, who controls the devil red button, please sit here." When everyone is seated, don't activate the Dharma treasures first. Wait for me to give the order. Xuechong was still respectful, although his cultivation level didn't seem to be much worse than Lan Yuxuan and the others. Xiao Hua and the others didn't hesitate and landed on the bone-flying boat. Once everyone was seated, Shui Chong looked around and saw that most of the cultivators were already seated. He then said, Venomous Stone, please activate your magic treasure. Buzz. As Venomous Stone activated his magic power, the wood spirit wings let out a faint rumbling sound. They turned into 100-meter-long wings and extended out from both sides of the bone-flying ship. Junior Sect Brother Men, Junior Sect Brothers, please get ready. Shui Chong's face tightened, and he ordered in a low voice. Men Shifeng and the other Immortal Alliance disciples rubbed their hands together, and strands of soul power were produced from their bodies, landing on the bone-flying boat. The entire flying boat gradually began to flicker, swaying left and right. Everyone, please activate your magic treasures. Shui Chong pressed his palms on the flying boat, and the entire boat immediately stabilized. Then Shui Chong shouted. Xiao Hua and the others activated their transcendence energy according to his words. Light smoke, light wind, and lightning energy emerged from all over the place. Then the demonic aura on the Devil Crimson Buckle flourished, enveloping the entire white bone flying ship. The flying ship shot up into the sky. So that's how it is. Seeing that the bone-flying boat was actually able to fly freely under the confinement of heaven and earth, Xiao Hua somewhat understood. He nodded inwardly. Du Peng used a soul tool as the foundation, a magic treasure outside of the 5 elements as support, and demonic qi as protection. It really has a miraculous effect. This flying boat must be able to fly freely in the transportation tunnel that restricts the 5 elements. This kind of method, even this Xiao couldn't think of it in a short time. After Shui Chong controlled the flying boat to rush into the sky, it didn't take long for even more flying boats to rise into the sky. Everyone was flying high in the sky, and what they lacked was some coordination. In less than half a cup of tea's time, the entire bone-flying boat was as smooth as if it was controlled by a single person. After familiarizing themselves with the cultivation method for a meal, Shui Chong controlled the bone-flying boat to descend from the sky. After everyone withdrew their magic power, Shui Chong reported to Du Peng through the token. Not long after, another disciple came over, took out 10 storage rings, and respectfully handed them over to everyone saying, This is a reward from Sir Special Envoy. Shui Chong was overjoyed. He hurriedly received the storage rings and bowed saying, This is what this disciple should do. Xiao Hua and the others also received them. Because they couldn't look through the storage rings in this place, everyone temporarily put them away. Shui Chong smiled and said a few more words to everyone before putting away the bone-flying boat. He took out a jade bottle from his bosom, poured out several scarlet pills, and took them with Men Qifeng and the others. Xiao Hua glanced at these pills and knew that they were used by soul cultivators. It was likely that Shui Chong and the others had used too much soul power just now. But then, Xiao Hua was bewildered. They had only flown for a short while, and they had to rely on pills. Then what if they entered the transportation tunnel? Forget it. Xiao Hua glanced at the nascent soul cultivators chatting and laughing beside him. Ever since Huang Qufan and Ancestor Yuji died, Venomous Stone and the others no longer discussed how to kill him. However, from their subsequent sound transmissions, Xiao Hua knew that Su Luiyue and the others weren't good people, so Xiao Hua didn't care about their lives. He thought to himself, Let's talk about it after we enter the transportation tunnel. Not to mention the nascent soul cultivators and the Dark Oak Immortal Union disciples chatting and laughing. Zhang Jie's expression became even more unsightly as he looked at the devilish aura fluttering nearby. Du Peng stole a glance, then flew to the side and respectfully said, Senior, this junior has a suggestion, but I don't know if I should say it. Say it. Zhang Jie coldly replied. Senior's strength is too great. The transportation tunnel might not be able to withstand Senior's entry, so this junior has already prepared a blood-red robe for Senior to help Senior conceal his cultivation. Du Peng took out a blood-red robe as thin as a cicada's wing from a silk pouch and respectfully handed it to Zhang Jie. Take it away. Zhang Jie glanced at it and coldly said, What do you think I am? How can I wear this thing? But Du Peng's forehead was covered in sweat, and he hurriedly explained, This junior definitely didn't tamper with it, it was just for senior. Whether or not you tamper with it, I can see it clearly. Zhang Jie didn't even look at Du Peng and replied, "It's precisely because you didn't tamper with it that you're standing in front of me in perfect condition." "All right." Du Peng helplessly took the blood-red robe and said, "If senior has the means, then that's for the best. Otherwise, please reconsider." "Don't worry." Zhang Jie unhappily glanced at Xiaohua and said, "If others can do it, then so can I." Du Peng didn't quite understand Zhang Jie's indirect meaning, and hurriedly nodded, "Yes, this junior understands." Another hour passed, and all the bone airships had been tested. Truly, everything was ready except for the east wind. However, this east wind had been waiting for more than 10 days. Xiaohua didn't know how many times his soul consciousness had scanned the restrictions of heaven and earth around Cutting Blade Ridge, but he didn't find any signs of the restrictions that separated heaven and earth loosening. "Senior, don't be impatient. Senior, don't be impatient." Du Peng didn't need to explain anything to the disciples of the Immortal Union, but he couldn't not explain to Zhang Jie. This sentence was probably what he often said in the past 10 days. In fact, not only was Zhang Jie impatient, Xiaohua's heart also seemed to be constantly scratched by a small hand. He had endured for so long that he really felt like he couldn't endure it anymore. Actually, he could directly use thunderous methods to interrogate Du Peng, and even defeat Alliance Master Lian Feng of the Immortal Union. However, he placed too much importance on returning to the Dawn Rain continent. He was afraid that he would miss the opportunity to return if he didn't do something appropriate, so he carefully mixed with nascent soul cultivators. However, in the end, he couldn't see this opportunity again and again, and anyone would be angry. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a month, vote for a recommendation, collect, reward, and thank all forms of support. Chapter 50-27. However, at dusk on this day, a stripe of multicolored light suddenly appeared in the originally gloomy darkness. This multicolored light was like a strange rune that covered the entire sky. In front of Cutting Blade Ridge, the sky and earth were sealed, so it was impossible to tell the time apart. Only day and night were distinct. Seeing the light thinning out, Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. He hurriedly sent out his soul sense to the left of Cutting Blade Ridge, only to be disappointed again. There were still no signs of the seal loosening. But it was at this time that Du Peng's voice rang out. "Everyone, the time we've been waiting for is about to arrive. Please make your preparations." Du Peng was wild with joy. There was even the word "please" in his command. Not only was Xiaohua puzzled, even Zhang Jie was looking at the sky with 7-colored eyes. Looking at Cutting Blade Ridge, he asked curiously, "Du Peng, what's going on? The seal doesn't show any signs of loosening." "Senior, don't worry." Du Peng's words were smooth, but his face was no longer nervous. Instead, it was filled with confidence. Smiling, he said, "This phenomenon didn't exceed Alliance Master Lian's expectations. This junior has already arranged everything. Senior only needs to wait for the teleportation tunnel. If we're lucky, Senior will be able to reach the Lost Lands through the tunnel tomorrow morning." Lucky. Zhang Jie looked at Du Peng. It wasn't clear if he was talking to Du Peng or Xiaohua. "So you're saying that even if we find the teleportation tunnel, with our careful arrangements, only 1 in 10,000 will be able to pass through it?" Du Peng smiled bitterly. Looking to his left, he transmitted, "Senior is right, and this is also because Senior is here. Otherwise, even if this junior came, this junior wouldn't have a 10% chance." "Then what if I came?" Zhang Jie asked with interest. "I won't hide it from Senior. Even with Senior, there's only a 20% chance." Du Peng whispered back. 20%. Zhang Jie glanced at Xiaohua and transmitted, "With you there should be 30%, right?" "I don't know." Xiaohua still couldn't see anything from the sky, so he didn't dare to say anything. "How many can pass?" Zhang Jie asked Du Peng again. "It's hard to say." Du Peng thought for a moment and said, "Maybe only Senior, or maybe Junior as well. If the other disciples are lucky, maybe less than 5 will be able to pass." You're really willing to send your disciples to their deaths? Zhang Jie said sarcastically. Dupreng did not answer this question. Instead, he narrowed his eyes and looked at the changes in the sky as if he was observing some signs. Soon the sky darkened again. The area around the restrictive shield that was already dark became even darker. There was no light at all. Dupreng looked at the time, and then looked at the night sky that seemed to have never seen any stars or moon since he entered the Wuming mountain range. He raised his hand and a fist-sized white bead appeared. The white bead soared into the sky, but it stopped for a moment and then fell back down. The 5 elements of heaven and earth near the Broken Blade Ridge had begun to be confined. Ordinary magic weapons could not be used. Dupreng did not panic. He suddenly raised his head and roared. Roar! Devil chi gushed out from all over his body like ink. Along with the roar, puff! A column of blood light soared into the sky and hit the white bead. Woo woo woo. The white bead made a shrill sound like a ghost wailing and a wolf howling. It expanded rapidly in the blood light. In just a few breaths, it had turned into a skeleton that was dozens of feet tall. This skeleton was a little strange. It was so white that it looked quite scary. However, the bones were as white as a flower. It emitted a pale white light, illuminating the surrounding area for a few miles. Tens of thousands of cultivators didn't care about the night. They could see clearly without any light. However, when they saw the white light, they couldn't help but feel hopeful. Although the majority of these cultivators were humans who had been possessed. Disciples, get ready! Dupreng roared. The black gas around his body had already turned into a black robe. Although he didn't show the face of a demon, Dupreng no longer concealed his identity as a demon general. Along with Dupreng's order, the 365 disciples of the Broken Blade Immortal Union responded. They stood at the place where they had tried countless times before. Each of them sat down cross-legged, either in the air or on the ground. Seeing that the pentagonal magic formation had already taken shape, Dupreng looked around again. He suppressed the joy in his heart and shouted, "Disciples, get ready!" Yes. Shui Chong and the other head disciples answered in unison. They took Xiao Hua, Bai Fei, and the others to stand in different places of the Broken Blade Ridge. Strange. Xiao Hua's soul had never been withdrawn. However, at this moment, he still didn't find any sign of the restriction loosening. Even the restriction of heaven and earth was the same as before. It was as cold as a mountain without the slightest change. Xiao Hua really didn't know what kind of mysterious method Dupreng had. Silence, dead silence. There wasn't even a wind, let alone the chirping of birds and insects. Under the white light of the skeletons, the entire earth was like a tomb. Everyone was like a dead person, not daring to move. Just as everything came to a standstill, a miracle occurred. In the pitch-black night sky, a ray of red light suddenly appeared. This red light was like a needle that pierced through the darkness. Following that, even more red lights tore through the darkness like flying swords. The red light that filled the sky was like countless flowing blood, gradually washing the entire sky. On the dead silent earth, many cultivators who didn't know what was going on exclaimed in surprise. They watched the blood-red light slowly fall from the sky, dyeing the earth and the pale white skeletons. The originally white light became even more red. This is. Xiao Hua saw the blood-red brilliance and felt an unimaginable familiarity in his heart. A voice shouted in his heart, "Damn it! Isn't this Huta Great God's sacrificial night? Isn't this red light the moonlight of the blood-red sacrificial moon?" Just as this thought appeared in Xiao Hua's mind, he saw that in the red horizon, a scarlet crescent shaped like a small boat was peeking out of the pitch-black darkness. And between the heavens and earth, rumbling sounds of laws shaking came pouring down like a landslide and a tsunami. Xiao Hua had not retracted his soul sense, but he had already seen the mountain-like restrictive barrier swaying slightly. Layers of smoke-like ripples rose from the restrictive barrier, breaking it into pieces and drifting in the air. Although the heaven and earth restrictive barrier had separated the Wuming mountain range from the millions of Meng mountains, and had mercilessly separated the descendants of the 12 great gods, it still couldn't stop the merciful gaze of Huta Great God. During the sacrificial night, Huta Great God tore apart the heaven and earth restrictive barrier, showering the two Wuming mountains with the blessings of the blood moon. While Xiaohua was shocked, he suddenly recalled Ziming's words. Every time Huta Great God performs the sacrificial night, the entire Meng Mountains would be covered in the color of blood. The heaven and earth would be grateful, and the people would be grateful. Even some soul beasts would come out from their hiding places and offer sacrifices to Huta Great God, expressing their gratitude for the blessings of Huta Great God, offering sacrifices to Huta Great God. Thank you, Huta Great God. Xiaohua couldn't help but murmur in his heart. I know I'm useless, I know nothing, and I have nothing. I only hope that tonight, I can borrow the power of Huta Great God to pass through the heaven and earth restrictive barrier, and return to the Dawn Rain continent, so that I can find a way to break the immortal formation, and save the billions of lives in the 3 continents that are about to be destroyed. Perhaps Xiaohua's prayer was effective, because the blood moon, which had just revealed 30% of its original crescent moon, and was about to be covered by the pitch-black restrictive barrier, suddenly shone brightly. The color of blood fell from the sky like rain, sprinkling on the Wuming mountain range, the Cutting Blade Ridge, and the heaven and earth restrictive barrier that no one could break. Xiaohua was overjoyed, and he even released his soul sense crazily. Amidst the madness of the blood moon, only Zhang Jie could sense Xiaohua's soul sense. The other cultivators naturally couldn't sense it. However, at this time, Zhang Jie was a little frightened, because under the blood moon, her body was also dyed red. She was originally a spiritual body, and that red color was the power of heaven and earth. Unexpectedly, it was slowly invading her body. An indescribable anxiety, a kind of bloodlust that had never appeared before, was gradually born along with an even more dense compassion. Xiaohua's soul sense spread out for more than 1,000 li, but the heaven and earth restrictive barrier in the sky was still like a 10,000 li mountain, with no end at all. Although the blood moon violently shook the mountain peak, no cracks appeared on the mountain peak. Instead, the surface layer of the heaven and earth restrictive barrier peeled off along with the fluctuations, becoming more and more solid. Xiaohua was a little dumbfounded. This won't do. This is simply impossible to tear open the heaven and earth restrictive barrier. Moreover, I feel that the heaven and earth restrictive barrier is as heavy as a mountain, far from just 1 or 2 layers of heaven and earth restrictive barrier. Even if I tear it open and rush in, I will definitely be trapped inside and won't be able to escape. However, even so, this Xiao has no choice but to fly up and take a look. However, at this moment, the sound of flowing water faintly appeared in Xiaohua's ears. Xiaohua was stunned. He couldn't believe his ears. After all, after entering the Wuming mountain range and approaching the Broken Blade Ridge, there was almost no water flow. How could there be water flow at this time? Not to mention Xiaohua. Even the other cultivators were stunned. They hurriedly looked around. However, under the blood moon, everything was blood red. The cultivators didn't see any water flow. They also didn't know where this increasingly loud sound of flowing water came from. But to God, Xiaohua was naturally different from the other cultivators. His gaze landed on the blood-red ground, under the Wuming mountain range. He couldn't help but exclaim in his heart, "So, this is the sacrificial night." Under the surface of the Wuming mountain range, there was a stream of blood flowing from all over the Wuming mountain range. This stream of blood was innumerable. It seemed to be boundless at a glance. This innumerable stream of blood flowed down the Broken Blade Ridge, like a myriad of streams returning to their source. In every stream of blood, there was a soul. And in every stream of soul, there was a natural soul power. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian. Vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, gift it. Thank you for all of your support. Chapter 50-28. Xiaohua was enlightened. Ziming's words appeared in Xiaohua's mind again. According to the ancient legends, the moon tear is the divine eye of Huta Great God. Under the bloodlight, all the evil beings in the Meng Mountains will be wiped out. Most of the sacrificial ceremonies in the Huta stronghold will be held during the sacrificial night. If I were to light up my soul lamp at this time, I would be blessed by Huta Great God easily. Elder Wu wouldn't even need to do anything. When Huta Great God opens her divine eye, It is also the time when Huta Great God opens her arms. If we can enter her arms now, we will be pitted by Huta Great God and preserve the souls of the descendants of Meng Mountains. On the day of reincarnation, they will still retain their memories of this life. Xiaohua thought to himself. Of course, Ziming is right. In my dimension, I already have Nuo Yeqing, the reincarnation of Master Goqin, as a living example. However, the most important function of the sacrificial night is not this, but the moon tear, to watch the wandering souls in the Wuming Mountains return to Huta Great God's arms. Just like what Fairy Hongxia said, it is like the Ghost Festival in the Xiaoyu continent. On the day of the Ghost Festival, the 9 underworlds door will open and hundreds of ghosts will roam the mountains. Everything will be avoided. The most amazing thing is, Huta Great God's nether blood sea seems to be at the Huta stronghold, which is the other side of the natural seal. If the wandering souls in the Wuming Mountains want to go there, they have to go through the natural seal. That's why the Defeat Immortal Alliance discovered this phenomenon. Based on his understanding of the sacrificial night, Alliance Master Lianfeng made so many preparations. He waited for the moon tear to appear, and followed the blood of the wandering souls to go through the natural seal. The teleportation tunnel that Du Peng mentioned is actually not a real teleportation tunnel. It is a soul item activated by the disciples of the Defeat Immortal Alliance who have cultivated soul spells. Just as Xiaohua was thinking, Du Peng's voice of command sounded out once more, and those 365 disciples of the defeated Immortal Alliance withdrew fist-sized blood pearls from their pockets. Xiaohua swept them with his gaze and couldn't help but sigh. He was able to see clearly that these were precisely the baleful blood pearls he saw in the Wen clan earlier. Previously, when Zhou had sacrificed so many Wen clan disciples to refine a single blood fiend spirit pearl. Now that Du Peng had taken out 365 blood fiend spirit pearls, who knew how many cultivators and humans he had sacrificed in the past hundreds of years? Damn it! Xiaohua clenched his teeth and cursed on the ground. Zhang Jie was even more shocked. The milky white holy light around him flickered like a candle in the night wind. PFFF. PFFF. Not only that, the 365 disciples took out blood beads and threw them into the air without saying a word. Then they slapped their own heads, and a blood infant covered in demonic patterns flew out. The blood infant waved its hand and hit the bodies below it. A series of popping sounds rang out, and the 365 disciples who were still alive just a moment ago turned into blood. The blood infant opened its mouth and sucked the blood into its body. The demonic patterns on its body began to tremble violently. The blood infant cackled and charged headfirst into the blood demon spirit pearl. Buzz! The 365 blood demon spirit pearls emitted a strange demonic light. Boom! As the demonic light of the blood demon spirit pearls flashed, the 365 blood demon spirit pearls collided with each other. After a loud bang, waves of blood were created. Countless wandering souls struggled like drowning humans. The thick smell of blood spread in all directions. However, no matter how much the smell of blood spread, the blood and wandering souls could only cover the area where the array was. They couldn't cross half a step into the lightning pool. Seeing that the blood demon spirit pearls were gathering, Du Peng didn't dare to slow down. He took out a bone box and opened it. It was the blood talisman that the 5 envoys used together. Woo! Without Du Peng's command, the blood talisman immediately flew up into the sky. Waves of strange green patterns began to appear around the blood talisman. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The 365 blood infants that rushed into the blood demon spirit pearls earlier flew out again, and rushed into the blood talisman. Boom! Another earth-shaking rumble sounded. The blood infant had already turned into a blood stain that flashed with green light. It brought along 365 waves of blood as it rushed towards the Broken Blade Ridge. In the depths of the Wuming Mountain Range, boom! The blood waves hit the heaven and earth restriction. A powerful force suddenly fell from the sky. This force enveloped Xiaohua and the others. Damn it! Once Xiaohua sensed this enormous force, he immediately understood what had happened. With so many souls attacking the restriction, it would naturally cause a backlash from the restriction. Even if his strength was at its peak, he would probably be unable to resist this unparalleled enormous force. Everyone, don't be afraid. Just as Xiaohua was thinking about how to deal with it, Du Peng's voice sounded. If there was only one person here, I'm afraid that even Long Shenxi wouldn't be able to deal with this force. However, there are tens of thousands of us. This force is evenly distributed among tens of thousands of people. Believe this, old man. Even if you are a Golden Core disciple, you will definitely be unharmed. Just as Du Peng's voice fell, the force had already fallen. Just as Du Peng said, most of the force fell on the blood waves. However, a small part of it fell on the blood vessels of every cultivator. This force was reduced by too much. Even the Golden Core disciples only trembled a little. They didn't feel too much damage. Of course, Xiaohua knew that under this attack, other than himself and Zhang Jie, the blood vessels of the other cultivators were damaged. These blood vessels couldn't be examined by ordinary magic techniques. However, it would have a great impact on their future cultivation. Looking at the blood waves that hit the heaven and earth restriction, under the backlash of the restriction, they had already turned into countless small blood streams. The 365 blood infants had also disappeared. Gurgle, gurgle. The blood flowed lightly and calmly around the broken blade ridge. The entire mountain of heaven and earth restriction was trembling violently under the moon's tears of the night. Suddenly, swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The sound of wind blowing willow leaves could be heard. Xiaohua was ecstatic. He looked over and sure enough, in the depths of the earth, small blood streams that were like strands of hair had already penetrated the heaven and earth restriction and flowed into the depths of the broken blade ridge. As these strands of blood seeped in, the faint aura of the nether blood sea was faintly produced. Everyone, don't be anxious. Wait a moment. Du Peng seemed to have seen this before. He wasn't anxious. Instead, he stood there as steady as a mountain and said calmly. However, as he spoke, he looked at Zhang Jie with some worry. At this time, Zhang Jie's body was already soaked in blood. He didn't look any different from the blood infants from before. Senior, can you still hold on? Du Peng couldn't help but ask. Woo. Zhang Jie finally couldn't bear it. His wings of light fluttered and 7 rays of light were produced. Waves of hymns sounded. The originally human-shaped spiritual body gradually transformed. The impatience flower that appeared that day was born again. When the impatience flower appeared, it immediately gave off a holy brilliance. The brilliance condensed into the shape of a grape around the impatience flower, blocking the blood moon's light outside. Although Du Peng asked everyone to wait, how could Xiaohua not be anxious? He clearly knew that in half a cup of tea's time, the blood light of the moon's tears would weaken. If the heaven and earth restrictions flaw couldn't be enlarged before the blood light weakened, he was afraid that they would have to wait for the next moon sacrifice. However, looking at Du Peng's confident appearance, Xiaohua suppressed his anxiety and waited quietly. Just as Xiaohua expected, after half a cup of tea's time, the blood light of the red moon began to gradually fade. The red color was mixed with a pure white color. However, contrary to Xiaohua's expectations, when this pure white color appeared, the enormous rumbling sound became even more intense, and the blood that returned to the nether sea of blood also became extraordinarily violent. Even more blood surged from the places that had been penetrated previously, and in the blink of an eye, a rather large crack was formed. Moreover, what made Xiaohua even more flabbergasted was that in these gaps, faint traces of devil qi gushed out. This devil qi condensed into devil patterns. They were actually black devil paths that were gradually taking shape. Needless to say, these black devil paths were the transmission tunnels that Du Peng spoke of. Everyone, seeing the black devil paths appear, Du Peng no longer dared to hesitate and ordered, form a formation. According to the arrangement of the group leader, fly to different transmission tunnels. Damn it, this black devil path. How in the world is it constructed within the heaven and earth restriction? Xiaohua looked at these black devil paths and felt more and more incredulous. While following the orders of Shui Chong and the others, he sat on the white bone flying boat and thought to himself. Senior. Du Peng quietly took out the blood-red robe from before and handed it to Zhang Jie. You can take it first. If you can enter the transmission tunnel, you can throw it away casually. But if you can't enter, then you should wear this blood-red robe. Whether this junior can safely pass through the transmission tunnel depends on senior. Zhang Jie's figure was still in the shape of a phoenix flower, and his tone was still cold. What does your death have to do with me? Even if I die, I won't wear this blood-red robe. I don't mind telling you the truth. I'm already regretting my decision to work with you. You've killed countless living beings over the past 1,000 years, just to open up the teleportation tunnel. Although I'm not from the human tribe, I can't tolerate you going against the rules. Perhaps I'll change my mind and kill you immediately after we pass through the Wuming mountain range. Hearing Zhang Jie's words, Du Peng wasn't afraid at all. He smiled and said, Senior is right. From Senior's point of view, I can't be forgiven. But Senior, don't forget that I'm a demon. In my eyes, humans are just food. When I refine my own food, I hurt Daimeld or something. Senior, what reason do you have to kill this junior? If it was before, Zhang Jie might have been speechless. But now, Zhang Jie laughed and said, Of course I won't make things difficult for you. But he will definitely not let you go. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it and reward it. Chapter 50-29. Zhang Jie had already said such ambiguous words several times. Today he actually pointed out him. Du Peng suddenly realized and asked in surprise, Who is he? Zhang Jie smiled. His smile was as bright as the flower of a phoenix. He looked at the thousands of bone-flying boats and said, Perhaps, you will know soon. Although Zhang Jie did not say who he was, Du Peng could tell from Zhang Jie's expression that he must be a cultivator at the same level as Zhang Jie. And if there was no accident, he must be a Taoist disciple. Du Peng thought of many things in an instant, but he could not find any flaws. He did not know where he had exposed himself. He secretly cursed, Damn it! He began to plan again. This time, he must take the risk to enter the Lost Land. He must not appear in the Yilin continent again. When Du Peng made his decision, the flying boat that Xiao Hua and the others were on had already fallen into the gurgling blood river under Shui Chang's control. Similar to what Xiao Hua thought, this white bone flying boat was definitely not an ordinary soul tool. It was also not as simple as it was when they practiced in the air. When everyone sat down on the white bones, Shui Chang gave a few orders. Everyone activated their magic treasures, and the white bone flying boat gradually floated up. However, the white bone flying boat did not rush into the broken restriction under the cutting blade ridge. Instead, it flew into the distance. After flying for several hundred feet, it suddenly soared into the sky. After flying for several thousand feet, it turned the boat around. The whole flying boat spun rapidly and rushed into the ground under the Wuming mountain range. At this time, Shiqing's light smoke rope was activated again. It easily broke the restriction of the 5 elements and penetrated deep into the ground. What was special was that the demonic crimson button activated by Su Luiyue now had a strange demonic mark. This demonic mark not only firmly bound Xiao Hua and the others on the white bones, but also gradually elongated as it spun. Xiao Hua and the others sat on the flying boat and saw that the nearby mountain rocks and sand were getting bigger and bigger. The small blood river in the distance now looked like a monstrous river. They already understood that the demonic crimson button had the effect of shrinking. The white bone flying boat was now not much bigger than the mountain rocks next to it. Pa! The white bone flying boat plunged straight into the blood river, splashing up waves several feet high. Without waiting for the flying ship to stop, hundreds of blood devils emerged from the demonic qi. These blood devils opened their bloody mouths and devoured the blood in the river. In just a few moments, the demonic qi was overflowing with blood, and the entire flying ship was dyed in a blood-red color. After the blood demon swallowed the blood, the bone boat quickly came to a stop. Then, before the bone boat floated up, Shui Chong hurriedly said, Seniors, this junior won't say anything unnecessary. Now that we've entered the blood river, we're still some distance away from the heaven and earth restriction. Although the heaven and earth restriction has been torn apart by the blood river, the restriction's remaining power is still there. Whether we can break through the restriction and enter the teleportation tunnel will depend on your efforts. Haha, Well said, well said. Poison Stone Monk laughed heartily. Previously, this old man has traveled countless times in the Elin continent, and has seen countless dangerous situations and unimaginable methods. However, this old man has never felt as inconceivable as today. Since we've already come this far, this old man has already put life and death behind him. This old man just wants to see what the teleportation tunnel that your Fuyu Immortal Alliance has constructed in the Wumeng mountain range looks like, and whether it can make this old man's eyes light up again. Haha, well said, Senior. Shui Cheng also laughed heartily. How did he look like someone who had been possessed by a demon? He shouted. Then let's all work hard together, and let the other fellow Taoists see how we'll be the first to break through the teleportation tunnel. Of course, Senior, please don't worry. Although this junior hasn't entered the teleportation tunnel before, since the preparations to enter the tunnel are so difficult, the situation inside can't be bad, right? Charge! Su Luyue opened her mouth and shouted a word. Instantly, the white bone flying boat's demon chi surged, and its speed increased a bit. Don't be hasty, don't be hasty. Shui Cheng was slightly stunned, and then he said with a smile. Special Envoy has already said that at this moment, the 10 of us are one person, and we only need to talk about cooperation, and there's no need to flaunt our strength. Fellow Taoists, this junior dares to command again, and success or failure depends on this one move. Well said, well said. Shi Qing also urged. Hurry up and give the order, don't let the others take the lead. Then Shui Cheng gave the order in an orderly manner. The white bone flying boat was surrounded by demon chi, and layers of blood-red light turned into streamers. Inside the demon chi, the windy wheel, the thunder roar paddle, the wood spirit wings, and the light smoke puppet were all activated. And when the speed gradually increased, the white bone flying boat turned into a blood-red stream, and rushed toward the heaven and earth confinement of the Broken Blade Ridge along the blood-red stream. In less than half a cup of tea's time, a huge green stream appeared in front of the stream of blood. This green stream was like a mountain blocking the stream of blood, and it seemed to be unbreakable. When the blood stream rushed to this place, it was blocked, and waves rose to the sky. The waves made a loud rumbling sound, and suddenly turned back, and a powerful force interacted chaotically here. In particular, the bloodstream contained the power of bloodline and the power of reincarnation, and the green stream contained the power of confinement and the power of backlash. These forces were more powerful than the pure waves. Not only did they cause inexplicable fluctuations, but at the same time, they also tore the void. Since the void was torn, there was the power of space coming out to cause trouble. And it just so happened that amidst these chaotic forces, within the dark green restriction, there was a spatial teleportation force that was quietly waiting for the familiar demonic chi to arrive amidst the chaos. Xiaohua quietly released the demon chi. But just as the demon chi escaped from the demon red button's demon chi, a hollow sound immediately appeared in the nearby space, and a burst of collapsing force was born. Moreover, the green stream of light that was condensed like a mountain rock also had signs of falling down. Xiaohua was aghast. He knew that his demon chi was too powerful, and destroyed the balance here. He hurriedly withdrew the demon chi, and just as the demon chi was released and withdrawn, the white bone flying boat had already rushed in front of the green barrier. Above the light smoke, a light cloud suddenly rose, and just as it came in contact with the green barrier, it immediately penetrated inside. Caca! The barrier very naturally gave birth to ripples. These ripples made a strange sound, and cut off the light cloud. However, without waiting for the light cloud to disappear, the demon red button's demon chi and blood light came in an unending stream, and submerged the ripples. Boom boom boom. Just as the demon chi submerged the ripples, the entire barrier was suffused with a dense green color, as if the entire barrier was falling, and the demon chi and blood light were destroyed. However, at this moment, pooh! The white bone flying boat's bow pierced into the green barrier. And then, boom! Behind the white bone flying boat, the impact of the blood river, the bloodline power in the blood river, and the power of reincarnation came, pushing the white bone flying boat into the green barrier. Great! Seeing this, Shui Cheng couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice. It's a success. However, the sky was unpredictable. Inside the green barrier, the demon chi of the black demon path had already begun to turn into a ring shape, and was rolling towards the white bone flying boat. Boom boom boom. The entire barrier suddenly roared like a tsunami, and all the green color collapsed like water. The demon chi of the black demon path was annihilated by the pressure, and the crack near the white bone flying boat suddenly squeezed, and the entire white bone flying boat was stuck in the crack. Moreover, the white bone flying boat turned into a concave shape under the huge pressure, and an unparalleled heavy pressure slashed down like a giant blade. Not good. Shiqing and the others turned pale with fright, and shouted, "Our lives are over." And Shui Cheng exclaimed, "What? Could it be that there are also high-level cultivators breaking the restriction?" Xiao Hua's heart moved. He knew that this was the collapse caused by Zhang Jie entering the transmission tunnel, and he was also nervous. After all, his strength was not inferior to Zhang Jie's at this time. However, at this critical moment he didn't have time to think too much. The soul sword that had been accumulating power for a long time broke through the air, and it really hit the green barrier. Boom. The barrier where the soul sword landed was immediately split open, and countless rings of demon chi gushed out from the black demon path, covering the white bone flying boat all of a sudden. It was as if a big hand was exerting force in front of its head. Whoosh! The white bone flying boat broke through the barrier, and broke into the transmission tunnel. Then, the white bone flying boat shook in the black demon path, and immediately disappeared. As for behind the white bone flying boat, boom! The cracks in the barrier collapsed together, and countless chaotic forces tore one after another. The blood river was once again blocked outside the green restriction of heaven and earth. Although it was called a transmission tunnel, the white bone flying boat suddenly rushed out of the pitch-black black demon path like a white horse. When Xiao Hua's eyes lit up and he saw the situation around him clearly, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air again, and secretly cried out in his heart, "How? How is this possible? The black demon path only teleported for a moment. How could it be here?" Back to Zhang Jie. Seeing that most of the white bone flying boats had rushed into the blood river, she frowned again. Looking at Du Peng, who was not panicking at all, she asked, "When do we set off?" Reporting to Senior, "We can set off at any time." Although Du Peng answered very elegantly, he was still muttering in his heart, calculating where he had exposed himself. "Lead the way, let's go," Zhang Jie urged without hesitation. "Senior, please." As Du Peng spoke, a thick demon chi appeared around his body. His handsome human skin was quickly drowned by the demon chi, and an ugly demon with strength close to a demon commander appeared from the demon chi. "Umph," Zhang Jie snorted coldly, somewhat surprised by Du Peng's growth in strength. However, this surprise only lasted for a moment. Even if Du Peng was a demon king, he was still an ant in Zhang Jie's eyes. Zhang Jie didn't care about Du Peng at all. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote, vote for a recommendation vote, bookmark, reward, and thank you for all forms of support. The other chapters will be updated at night. Chapter 50-30. Du Peng returned to his demonic form, but he was not in a hurry to leave. Instead, he took out a blood-red robe from the demonic chi. It was similar to the one he gave Zhang Jie. When Du Peng put it on, the robe turned into a net and fell into the demonic chi. The demonic king's aura quickly retracted, and in just a few breaths, Du Peng's aura was hidden to the level of a demon general. "Senior," Du Peng asked in a hoarse voice, "if you have a secret technique to hide your strength, please use it as soon as possible. Otherwise, with your strength, this restriction will definitely not allow you to pass. Even if you force your way in, the transmission tunnel will collapse." "Got it." Zhang Jie was a little impatient. Then, she broke free from the impatience flower, and retracted the 7 layers of light feathers. With each layer retracted, the holy light dimmed a little. When there was only 1 layer left, the holy light was as thin as a piece of paper. Zhang Jie hesitated for a moment, because the last layer of light feathers was stained with mottled blood. She really did not want to retract the blood into her spiritual body. So she impatiently urged, "Let's go." Okay. Du Peng sensed that Zhang Jie's aura had been concealed by 90% and knew that this was her limit. He did not dare to say anything more. His figure flashed, and like a white bone flying boat, he flew toward the blood river in the depths of the earth. Zhang Jie knew that Du Peng wanted to borrow the power of the blood river, so she did not have any doubts. She did not spread her wings and followed him. At this time, although there was a lot of blood, there was still not much that gathered together. Du Peng had to use his demonic technique to shrink his body and fall into the blood river. When Du Peng's demonic body came into contact with the blood, it immediately emitted a gurgling sound. Countless bubbles gushed out from his body. When these bubbles fell into the blood river, they transformed into numerous demons that greedily devoured the blood. Zhang Jie's spiritual body also shrank and landed behind Du Peng. However, on the surface of her body, there were olive-shaped fine lines. These fine lines bulged with holy light, blocking the blood light. Logically speaking, the blood flowing from the Wuming mountain range and the blood flowing from Du Peng's demonic blood spiritual pearl were the bloodline power of the human race in the mortal world. They should not be able to corrode the soul of an angel. However, it seemed that the holy light on Zhang Jie's body was trembling slightly. Perhaps her strength was restricted under the restriction of heaven and earth, or perhaps her injuries were triggered again. When Zhang Jie felt the power of the bloodline in the blood river binding her like a rope, Du Peng was indeed like a fish swimming in the blood river, freely accumulating his power. After a while, countless forces tore through the void, and the blood river was blocked by the huge green barrier. He transmitted his voice again. "Senior, I'm going to break through the shackles of the heaven and earth restriction. You just need to follow behind me. This shackle is a hurdle for ordinary cultivators, but it's nothing to you. Senior, you just need to control your strength and don't cause the transmission tunnel to collapse." "I know," Zhang Jie replied indifferently. He watched as the demonic aura and shadow around Du Peng turned into a spiral. He also waved his outermost light feather. Holy light flowed out from the top of his head like a stream of water, and scattered into the stream of blood like a sky full of thin braids. Du Peng urged his body, and directly crashed into the green barrier. Boom! With a shake, the green barrier shook as expected, and a powerful force descended from the sky. However, before the huge force landed, the black demon path inside the barrier released rings of demonic aura that enveloped Du Peng's body. Du Peng disappeared in a flash. With Du Peng's disappearance, the huge force also strangely disappeared. However, the green barrier was still shaking, and the resistance of the larger waves of the blood river and the barrier became stronger. Zhang Jie naturally did not take such an obstacle to heart. She turned into light and pounced into the barrier even faster than Du Peng. Swoosh! Like a sharp awl, Zhang Jie's body pierced through the barrier and fell into it. Although it was extremely easy to pierce through the barrier, Zhang Jie had just touched the green barrier when a huge force several times greater than Du Peng's fell from the sky. At this moment, the demonic aura rings of the black demon path also spun and pounced over. Zhang Jie instinctively frowned, but she knew that this was the so-called teleportation tunnel, so she did not resist and was about to enter along with the suction force. However, at this moment, the demonic aura of the black demon path began to collapse as soon as it touched Zhang Jie's angelic holy light. The rings of demonic aura either retreated in fear, or were destroyed in the void by the holy light. Boom, boom, boom. The black demon path could not catch Zhang Jie, and the power of the sky and earth immediately increased greatly. The cracks in the green barrier where Zhang Jie was also trembling violently. Large patches of the barrier began to collapse, and the space within a radius of hundreds of feet began to be annihilated under the huge force. Damn it! Zhang Jie naturally did not know that her spirit body was innately incompatible with the demonic aura, causing Xiao Hua and the others to be in danger. However, she still knew that she was in trouble. She cursed in a low voice and spread out her light feathers. The second layer of light feathers was about to spread out, but just as the second layer of light feathers appeared, the entire world let out an earth-shattering sound. Zhang Jie was even more shocked. She immediately understood that she was in trouble, and without thinking, not only did she shrink the second layer of light feathers, But she also put the last layer of light feathers stained with blood, demonic aura, and other impurities into her body. As soon as the light feathers entered her spirit body, many impurities immediately appeared in Zhang Jie's body. Sigh. Zhang Jie could not help but sigh as a thought appeared in her mind. Angel of Sin. Have I already taken the first step? The moment the light feathers entered her body, Zhang Jie's mind was filled with thoughts, but her figure was several times faster than Du Peng's as she rushed into the collapsed black demon path. Boom boom boom. The black demon path was unable to withstand Zhang Jie's rush, and collapsed bit by bit. However, at the same time, Zhang Jie's figure also slowly disappeared. After Xiaohua escaped from the black demon path, the white bone flying boat immediately expanded and returned to its original size. When Xiaohua saw the scene in front of her, she was shocked. She saw a sea of blood that stretched as far as the eye could see. Within the sea of blood, white bones grew, and everything was revealed. The souls were either wailing or groaning, and all of them were in pain. As the sounds rose and fell, countless rays of bloody light overflowed from the sea of blood, rushed high up, and enveloped the entire world. Not only was Xiaohua surprised, even Xuechong and the others were stunned. They were really dumbstruck. They looked at the vast sea of blood in disbelief, and were somewhat at a loss. However, just as they were in a daze, the sea of blood suddenly quieted down. Of course, it was only a moment of silence before the entire sea of blood boiled again. Inexplicable chaotic fluctuations emerged from the sea of blood. Following these fluctuations were countless large and small whirlpools. These whirlpools spun crazily in the sea of blood, and each whirlpool emitted a huge suction force. The white bones and souls from before wailed as they were sucked into these whirlpools. The whirlpools became deeper and deeper, like lifeless eyes looking at the space of the sea of blood. Above the vortex, countless gusts of netherworld wind turned into tornadoes that rushed into the boundless sky. These tornadoes let out fierce roars like crazy horned dragons that completely messed up the space of the blood sea. After these hurricanes were born, they did not stay still but flew in all directions. Several hurricanes swayed and pounced on the white bone flying boat where Xiaohua and the others were. Not good. At this moment, Xuechong finally came to his senses and shouted, "Seniors, we have already rushed into the heaven and earth restriction. The teleportation tunnel just now has already disappeared. We need to find another teleportation tunnel. Seniors, listen to this junior's command." As he spoke, everyone came back to their senses. Under Xuechong's command, they activated their magic treasures again. The white bone flying boat paused for a moment, then broke through the waves and flew forward in the midst of the hurricanes. Xiaohua was distracted to activate the windy wheel while thinking to himself, "That's not right. This place is deep in the Wuming mountain range, which means it's the most mysterious place in the millions of Meng mountains. We just broke through a layer of barrier. How could we reach the Netherworld Blood Sea directly? And the Netherworld Blood Sea, isn't it under the Netherworld Palace in Huta Stockade? If so, could it be that the other Black Demon path leads directly to Huta Stockade? But if that's not the case, where is this Netherworld Blood Sea? Could it be that the Netherworld Blood Sea in the Wuming mountain range and the Netherworld Blood Sea in the millions of Meng mountains are not the same? This mysterious restriction of heaven and earth actually separates the two Netherworld Blood Seas? I might as well let Daoist Witch go out and have a look. After all, this is the Netherworld Blood Sea. His body won't be restricted. Thinking of this, Xiaohua was about to summon Daoist Witch. But just as he was about to give it a try, Xiaohua was surprised again. Oh no! Why can't I sense any of my clones? Not only that, between heaven and earth, the suppression is even stronger. It's hundreds and thousands of times stronger than the outside. Other than my body, everything else is suppressed. I can only exert Taoist magic power equivalent to the mid-late nascent soul stage. What should I do? While he was surprised, Xiaohua looked at the white bone flying boat again. He saw the windy wheel, thunder roar paddle, wood spirit wings, light smoke puppet, and devil red buckle. Although each of them were suppressed, the wood spirit wings were the most special. It had obviously shrunk by 80%, and was not as light as before when it flew into the blood sea. On the contrary, this white bone flying boat was shuttling through the blood sea. nimbly flying through the towering waves. It looked very natural. Naturally, Xiaohua's soul sense was also suppressed, but he could still use it. He tried his best to release it and looked into the distance. However, he saw that the blood shadow was like smoke in the distance, and there was no end to the blood sea. He really didn't know where this white bone-flying ship would end. He also didn't know where the entrance to the other black demon path was mentioned by Shuai-Cheng. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it as a reward, and thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 50-31. Lucky. At this point, Xiaohua was already extremely thankful for his choice and forbearance. The restrictions in the Wuming mountain range were far beyond his expectations. It was even more shocking than breaking the boundary between the two realms. He didn't dare to imagine that if he had forced Lianfeng or searched Dupeng's soul, would he have been able to reach this step? Xiaohua released his soul sense to look behind him. Strangely enough, there were no other white bone-flying boats behind him, nor were there any human figures. Dupeng and Zhangjia were also not among them. It was as if the 10 of them were behind the netherworld blood sea. Of course, Xiaohua didn't think that Zhangjia couldn't enter the blood sea. He frowned and prepared to look at the blood sea. At this time, the bone airship trembled slightly and tilted. Zhangqi. Shuai-Cheng's anxious voice sounded. What's wrong? Martial uncle. Zhangqi's voice sounded bitter. Junior's magic power is insufficient. Damn it. Shuai-Cheng cursed. Seeing the bone airship falling towards the blood sea, he hurriedly shouted. Can't you hold on a little longer? According to the special envoy's instructions, we'll reach the second section of the tunnel in half a cup of tea's time. Feeling wronged, Zhangqi whispered. Junior has already tried her best. Roar. Shuai-Cheng was furious. Demonic aura suddenly appeared on his face, but after roaring, Shuai-Cheng suppressed his anger and shouted. Seniors, can you give us a little more strength? We only need to hold on for half a cup of tea's time. No problem. In a life-and-death situation, no one dared to be careless. Even Venomous Stone let out a low cry and increased his magic power. However, as everyone's magic power increased, the suppressive force also increased. The bone-flying ship that was already descending increased its speed. Shuai-Cheng clearly didn't expect this to happen. He hurriedly shouted, Seniors, quickly weaken your magic power. With their magic power weakened, the bone airship's speed slowed down. However, they still couldn't stop it from falling. Poison Stone saw this and frowned. Shuai-Cheng, this old man's wood spirit wings are almost useless. Why don't this old man replace Zhangqi? Shuai-Cheng helplessly said. Junior has also thought about it. However, Zhangqi has a special secret technique. She can control the bone airship, but Senior can't. Although the wood spirit wings are useless, they can still help the bone airship maintain its balance. Senior can't give up. Damn it. Seeing the blood sea approaching, the waves of the blood sea transformed into flying dragons. Shiqing could not help but shout. Is there no other way? Are we going to be swallowed by the blood sea? Shuai-Cheng. Xiaohua asked. What are the characteristics of the teleportation tunnel? How did you find the entrance to the teleportation tunnel? The two cultivators spoke at the same time, causing Shuai-Cheng to not know how to answer. Shiqing glanced at Xiaohua. Ancestor Yuji had discussed with him countless times on how to kill Xiaohua. Therefore, Shiqing had long viewed Xiaohua as a pitiful worm. Hearing Xiaohua's rare words, Shiqing couldn't help but smile coldly. Taoist Master Xiao, you can find the teleportation tunnel's entrance? Xiaohua simply ignored him and turned his head to look at Shuai-Cheng. Shuai-Cheng didn't dare to be negligent. He avoided the important and dwelled on the trivial as he said to Xiaohua. Senior Xiao, this junior has been repeatedly instructed by Lord Special Envoy. After flying into the restriction, this junior can find as many whirlpool-like existences as possible. No matter what it is, it will only take about the time of a meal. Damn it! Hearing Shuai-Cheng's extremely unreliable words, the Poison Stone Master became somewhat angry and shouted, Your defeat Immortal Alliance is too disregarding the life I'm waiting for. How can you find the teleportation tunnel like this? After entering the restricted space, Shui Chong was still as respectful as before, but his tone was filled with disdain. He coldly glanced at Poison Stone Guru and faintly replied, "I'll let Senior know. This is the special envoy's order. However, you should also take a look. This is the Blood Sea, a place that destroys everything. Even if my Defeat You Immortal Alliance set up the teleportation tunnel, I'm afraid it won't be easy to fix. That place." Without waiting for Shui Chong to finish speaking, Xiaohua pointed to the Blood Sea not far from his left and said, "There is a white bone reef in the Blood Sea. There seems to be a whirlpool-like thing on it. This is the closest." "The closest?" "Taoist Master Xiao. Your big words really make this old man admire you." Shiqing couldn't help but give Xiaohua a thumbs up. Shui Chong was indeed happy. He hurriedly shouted, "Senior, are you sure?" "Hurry up," Xiaohua said impatiently. "The flying boat is about to fall into the Blood Sea. If you can guarantee that this white bone flying boat won't be tainted by the Blood Sea's evil fate, you don't have to go." "Yes, yes." Shui Chong was like a drowning person who had grabbed onto a life-saving straw. He nodded with all his might and turned the flying boat towards that place. Sure enough, in just a few breaths of time, below the white bone flying boat, there was already a white bone reef less than 10 zhang wide. On top of it, the black demon path emitted a ring-shaped devil chi. "Damn it!" Poison Stone Master grinned and shouted, "Taoist Master Xiao, I really admire you. Can you really see it?" "I can." Xiaohua spat out a word. He looked around with some uneasiness. This was because he sensed that although the Blood Sea had already calmed down and the whirlpool and hurricane from before had already disappeared near the white bone reef, there was a warning sign that a storm was coming. An unprecedented suppressive force had already quietly emerged from the surroundings. This suppressive force was so great that it made Xiaohua apprehensive. Xiaohua couldn't help but ask, "Shui Chong, what's after this teleportation tunnel? Where is it?" Junior doesn't know. It was out of Shui Chong's expectation that Xiaohua could see far. Shui Chong didn't ignore Xiaohua's question as he replied in a respectful tone. "This junior only knows that after passing through this teleportation tunnel, we will rendezvous with the other bone airboats and follow the dispatch and command of the special envoy." As he spoke, the devil chi on the flying boat surged, and the entire flying boat began to fall. Of course, before the flying boat fell into the Blood Sea, the black demon path above the white bone reef had already emitted a huge suction force that enveloped the white bone flying boat. The white bone flying boat fell into the reef and disappeared. This time, the white bone flying boat teleported for a long time. However, when the black demon path came to an end, Xiaohua's eyes lit up. When he saw the situation in front of him clearly, he couldn't help but be stunned again. As for Du Peng, after entering the black demon path, the devil chi around his body swelled. One by one, the twisted blood devils surged out from his body and crazily howled as they passed through the teleportation tunnel. Standing above the Blood Sea, an unparalleled suppression came out of nowhere. The devil chi around Du Peng quickly converged, and the blood-red robe that was as thin as a cicada's wing appeared again. However, Du Peng didn't have time to look around. Instead, his gaze fell on the swaying devil chi at the exit of the black demon path, and hesitation appeared in his eyes. He knew very well that if Zhang Jie wanted to pass through the barrier of heaven and earth without causing the black demon path to collapse, she had to suppress her realm and strength. It could be said that the moment Zhang Jie came out of the black demon path was the moment she was at her weakest. If Du Peng wanted to launch a sneak attack, it was the best time. However, Du Peng knew even more clearly that Zhang Jie was an angel of the holy light realm. She was definitely not someone he could reach with his current strength. Moreover, if he wanted to pass through this mysterious suppression space, he had to rely on Zhang Jie. If his sneak attack failed, not only would all his plans fail, his life would also be in danger. However, Du Peng was in a dilemma again. This Zhang Jie is an angel of the holy light realm. If I devour her, then I can definitely become a demon lord in the future. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Is there such an opportunity in the entire demon realm? Should I attack? Or not? Just as Du Peng was thinking, the collapse of the black demon path came. Waves of crazy spatial power rushed out. With Du Peng's current strength, how could he resist it? He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He quickly retreated, and saw Zhang Jie flying out of the black demon path. However, just as Zhang Jie landed in the blood sea space, boom! A suppression force 10 times stronger than the one Du Peng had appeared before suddenly came crashing down. Seeing that the space around Zhang Jie was distorted by the pressure, Zhang Jie had no choice but to retract her wings again, and the holy light around her disappeared. Boom! Even so, the suppressive force still landed on Zhang Jie. Not only was Zhang Jie's body sent flying in midair, but more of the suppressive force landed on her body. Her originally pure and holy spiritual body was now suffused with a dark red color. Seeing this, Du Peng couldn't help but urge his body. Unfortunately, before he could fly a few feet closer, Zhang Jie's figure shook and broke free from the suppression. A pair of colorful eyes flashed with coldness. She looked at Du Peng and said with a smile, "Do you want to come over?" Du Peng was shocked because there was an almost irresistible bewitchment in Zhang Jie's eyes. He almost told the truth. Du Peng hurriedly looked away and said in a low voice, "Of course not. I'm just afraid that you won't be able to adapt." Humph. Zhang Jie snorted and said sternly, "This is the last time I'm reminding you. Don't have any thoughts of a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Otherwise, you know the consequences." Yes, I know." Zhang Jie was no longer as indifferent as before. Instead, it was replaced by a kind of fierceness. Du Peng was quite uncomfortable, and his forehead was already sweating. "How do I get out of this blood sea space?" Zhang Jie looked around and said coldly, "I'll let you know that this is not the real blood sea space." Du Peng hurriedly replied, "This is the blood sea created by the restriction of heaven and earth to resist the blood river wandering souls. The real blood sea is still in the depths." "Humph, I know that." Zhang Jie looked around, and the corner of his mouth showed a strong disdain. He replied, "I know this kind of trick very well, and I've seen a lot of it. I just didn't expect there to be such a restriction here, so I asked you how to get out of this space. In front of us is the Black Devil path left by the Devil clan." Du Peng didn't hide it. He pointed to the Blood Sea in the distance and said, "We just need to break through the attack of the Blood Sea to enter the transmission and reach the real Blood Sea. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please subscribe to it at Chidian, vote for it, give it a reward, and Chapter 50-32. As she spoke, countless white bones and souls condensed from the blood sea and rushed toward Zhang Jie and Du Peng. Zhang Jie, on the other hand, was already used to these attacks. She only said coldly, "It's always the same method. Can't it be fresher?" Du Peng didn't know what Zhang Jie meant, but from Zhang Jie's tone, Du Peng could tell that Zhang Jie had a card up his sleeve. Du Peng smiled and said, Yes, with Senior here, this junior can rest assured." "Humph, do you still need me to deal with this kind of attack?" Zhang Jie ignored Du Peng and said coldly. Although his words sounded the same as before, Du Peng felt a chill run down his spine. He glanced at Zhang Jie's spiritual body, which was devoid of holy light, and seemed to have understood something. He didn't dare to say anything else and hurriedly nodded. "Yes, Senior, please follow me." Then, Du Peng flew toward the gap of the hurricane and the edge of the whirlpool. After flying for a while, Du Peng whispered again, "Senior, this blood sea space is a magic array space. Everything is under the suppression of the magic array. The strength below the nascent soul stage can't cause the suppression to backfire. But the strength above the nascent soul stage can't be revealed, even if I have the strength of an avatar. Otherwise, the suppression will. Don't worry." Before Du Peng could finish, Zhang Jie said impatiently, "I know more about this magic array space than you do. And don't worry, I can tell you now that I can definitely take you to the Lost Land." "Ah." Du Peng couldn't believe his ears and asked curiously, "Senior, are you serious? This magic array space?" Hearing Zhang Jie's confident tone, Du Peng did not know if it was because Zhang Jie truly understood the heaven and earth restriction that kept countless Taoist cultivators out of the Lost Land, or because Zhang Jie had joined the Devil Dao, Dupeng did not know if it was because Zhang Jie really understood the heaven and earth restriction that kept countless Taoist cultivators out of the Lost Land, or because Zhang Jie had joined the Devil Dao. Unfortunately, even if Zhang Jie was possessed by the devil, her arrogance still didn't put Dupeng in her eyes. She didn't answer any of Dupeng's questions and just flew freely in the hurricane. Since Xiaohua and the others could enter the second section of the transmission tunnel without any danger, Dupeng and Zhang Jie didn't have any accidents and easily arrived at a white bone reef. As they landed, they activated the black demon path and disappeared, leaving only the bloody light behind them, the hurricane raging, and countless ghosts struggling in the whirlpool of the blood sea. Zhang Jie's figure was as steady as a rock in the black demon path. When the devil chi surged and the devil patterns flashed away like mottled shadows, another magnificent sea of blood appeared in front of her eyes. Zhang's mouth, Zhang Jie's eyes, blood sea of blood. As if this blood sea was not beyond her expectations. As she looked around, she saw Xiaohua sitting on a white bone flying boat with a dumbfounded look on his face. Oh, Zhang Jie was a little surprised and thought to herself, could it be that he still hasn't seen through the truth of this blood sea space? Xiaohua naturally hadn't seen through it. Seeing that there was another blood sea outside the black demon path, he couldn't help but be stunned and groaned in his heart. Damn it, are you kidding me? Why is there another blood sea? Could it be that there's more than one nether blood sea in the Wuming mountain range? Or, thinking of this, Xiaohua suddenly understood, and a look of sudden realization appeared on his face. I understand now. That wasn't the real netherworld blood sea, but a layer of formation created by the formation space. In order to resist the wandering souls and blood that entered the blood sea space, this blood sea was real. In other words, Dupeng and the others want to pass through this blood sea to reach the Huta village. Haha, spiritual master Xiao. At this time, a slightly excited voice sounded from Xiaohua's right hand. You're really lucky. Just now Yin'er asked about you. She was afraid that you wouldn't be able to pass through the barrier of the formation. So I told her the story of you leading the troops in the formation. They didn't believe me, but now it seems that I wasn't lying. Xiaohua looked up and saw that it was Bai Fei, who was beaming with joy. At this time he was sitting in another white bone flying ship, and was transmitting his voice to him with a smile. Haha. Thank you for your concern, fellow Taoist Bai. Xiaohua smiled, looked around and asked, I wonder if fellow Taoist Zhuang and Fairy you also successfully broke through this formation space? I'm afraid it's too difficult. Bai Fei had already come in and looked for a long time. At this time he replied, less than half of the people can enter this blood sea space, and less than half can pass through it. Now it seems that the total is less than 30%. Without releasing his soul sense, Xiaohua casually glanced and already understood that Bai Fei was right. There were less than 100 white bone flying ships floating above the blood sea, which meant that there were less than 10,000 cultivators alive. However, before Xiaohua could finish looking at the situation of the white bone flying ships, his gaze fell on Zhang Jie's body. Zhang Jie's wings of light were not spread out, and the holy light was not there. Although there was no blood-red robe on the surface of his body, strands of blood were faintly visible on his body like a spider web. Moreover, in the middle of these strands of blood, there was demonic chi surging out like smoke. The originally pure seven-colored eyes were now flashing with a layer of flirtatiousness. Xiaohua saw that there was something wrong with Zhang Jie with a glance. Zhang Jie. Xiaohua immediately transmitted his voice. You have been corroded by the blood sea? Xiaohua's transmission contained soul power. Zhang Jie's body trembled, and he hurriedly replied, Xiaohua, I beg you for something. Speak. Xiaohua secretly felt that something was wrong, and asked, what is it? If I really commit a crime. Zhang Jie's voice was filled with determination. You will definitely kill me with your own hands. Xiaohua heaved a sigh of relief and smiled. In other words, you haven't turned into a demon yet? Zhang Jie did not answer Xiaohua, but said to himself, now in this Yilin continent, only you have the strength to kill me. Remember this, remember this. If you can't kill me, I will definitely raze the lost land to the ground. It can't be? Xiaohua was a little surprised. You're that powerful when you turn into a demon? Of course, the power of an angel of sin far surpasses that of an angel. Zhang Jie nodded. Xiaohua suddenly thought of the saint artifact he'd obtained in the heaven's sacrificial abyss. Unfortunately, he was unable to take it out at all within this restricted space. So he smiled and said, "Don't be anxious. I obtained a saint artifact from your holy light world in the heaven's sacrificial abyss. Once we leave this restricted space, I'll give it to you." Unfortunately, Zhang Jie was not interested in this so-called saint weapon. He smiled faintly and said, "You don't understand what I'm saying at all. You also don't know what an angel of my holy light realm is. The so-called saint weapon." Zhang Jie did not finish his words. He looked up at the sky again, only to see a black mass in the sky, as if a layer of dark clouds was in the sky, and also as if the Broken Blade Ridge was right above their heads. However, no matter what it was, the pressure around everyone was even stronger than before. It was just that this black mass seemed to be blocked by something. Not to mention Zhang Jie. Even Xiaohua couldn't see through this black mass. Above their heads, they could not see through it, but the blood sea below them was very obvious. The blood waves in this blood sea were much more monstrous than before. Each wave was 100 zhang high. The whirlpools in the blood sea were less. The hurricanes in the space were also less, but the distortion in the space was even more intense, becoming more unstable. Swoosh! Another white bone flying boat rushed into the space, and Beauty Yu was sitting on it. At this moment, Beauty Yu's scarf was already torn off, revealing her flawless white skin and incomparably beautiful appearance. When Xiaohua saw this, the eyes of the Poison Stone Venerable at the side also lit up. What a pity! The Poison Stone Venerable actually did not care about Xiaohua, and said, "Jade Fat Ancestor does not have this luck." If not for Xiaohua being able to hear the sound transmission between the Poison Stone Venerable and Jade Fat Ancestor, he was afraid that he also would not understand the meaning of this sentence, and these words in Xiaohua's ears gave birth to a layer of disgust towards the Poison Stone Venerable and Shiqing. Hundreds of flying boats stopped in the air, right at the edge of the Blood Sea. They were not affected by the hurricane. Everyone was waiting. Another smoke of cultivation technique had passed, but there were no more white bone flying boats coming in. Du Peng transmitted his voice. "Disciples, get ready to set up the formation." "Yes." Shui Chong and the other group leaders responded, and each of them urged the white bone flying boats to close in on each other, surrounding Du Peng and Zhang Jie in the middle. "Form," Du Peng ordered, and Shui Chong and the others patted the white bone flying boats. Hong hong hong. A series of explosive sounds rushed out from the white bones, and Su Luiwe, who was controlling the demonic red button, was shocked to discover that the demonic red button was already out of her control, and the demonic rings floated out from the white bones, turning into a chain shape, and connected with each other. Kaka. In the midst of the sound, the several hundred white bone flying boats actually formed a rather large demonic formation, and layers of demonic flames rushed out from the demonic rings, blocking the nearby space. Hong hong hong. Just as the demonic formation was formed, a suppressive force immediately fell from the sky, smashing on the demonic formation like thunder, and in the midst of the loud sound, the white bone demonic formation trembled a few times, but did not collapse. Good. Seeing this, Du Peng, who had been on tenterhooks all this time, could not help but clap his hands and laugh. "The most dangerous moment has passed, disciples. Let us rush to the last transmission tunnel." "It's still early." Zhang Jie sneered. "The space of the Blood Sea is not as simple as you think. If you want to pass through the Blood Sea, not only do you have to be meticulous, but you also have to have unparalleled luck, because as long as there is a force that is stronger than the spatial formation, the suppressive force will be multiplied." Hong. Without waiting for Zhang Jie to finish, the Blood Sea had already confirmed his words, and an inexplicable wave of blood suddenly surged out from the Blood Sea, rushing toward the white bone demonic formation. Du Peng hurriedly gave orders, and thousands of disciples barely escaped from the claws of the blood wave. Then, the entire white bone demonic formation turned into the shape of a bone bird, and rushed into the Blood Sea, soaring in the blood wave and hurricane. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, Please subscribe to it at Chidian. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it a tip, and thank you for all of your support. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.